guys got anything down in the office then?
Oh,
Okay.
No, I don't want it open.
it is open.
Welcome to the September 14th City Council meeting. Tonight we have Captain Jeff Urak giving the invocation. Welcome, Captain.
Thank you, Council. We can remove our hats. On September 13th, 2023 at about 8 p.m., Algona, Iowa police officer Kevin Cram selflessly laid down his life in the line of duty for the citizens of Algona, Iowa. Tonight we will have a moment of silence and remember Officer Cram, his family, his friends, and the community that he served. While doing so, we will remember what the Apostle Paul Matthew wrote in his Gospel, chapter 5, verse 9, and I quote, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God." Let us bow our heads in silence for remembrance of Officer Cram. Lord, before we begin this meeting, we calm ourselves before you. Fill us with your patience, for we know you care deeply about us. Help us to listen before we speak. Help us to fully understand before we make judgment. And help us to value and appreciate the ones that we are about to hear before we think of our own concerns. Lord, may your light envelope us. May your Spirit guide us. May your grace surround us. And above all, may we know your Son, Jesus Christ, as our personal forgiver and leader. We ask this in your name.
Amen. Thanks, Captain. Cindy, will you please do the roll call?
Councilmember Freilich.
Present.
Councilmember Osborne.
Present.
Councilmember Gordon.
Present.
Councilmember Brockert.
Present.
Councilmember Gendrich.
Present.
Councilmember Lewis.
Present.
Councilmember Hopkins.
Present.
7 present, 0 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you. Will you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Cindy? Does she? I'll be the last one.
Do you want to speak?
All right, and tonight we have 4 proclamations. The first one is Public Power Week. Whereas we, the citizens of Muscatine, as consumers and owners of our electric, water, and communications utilities, place high value on a community-owned, not-for-profit utility, and both customers and owners of the utility have chosen local control over operations and policies through their city-appointed Board of Trustees, and whereas the Muscatine Power and Water, our electric, water, and communications utilities are a community asset that contributes to the well-being of the local citizens through things such as energy efficiency, customer service, environmental protection, and economic development. And whereas MPW employees are neighbors, serving neighbors, providing homes, businesses, schools, and local government agencies with not-for-profit water, electric, and communication services, while considering these 4 important factors: reliability, affordability, flexibility, and sustainability, making our community the best place to live, stay, work, play. And whereas Muscatine Power and Water is dependable and trustworthy institution whose local operation provides many consumer protections, provides prompt service during emergencies, and contributes to protecting the environment. Now therefore be it resolved that the mayor and city council designate the week of October 1st through October 7th, 2023, Public Power Week in Muscatine to honor Muscatine Power and Water, its customers, policymakers, and its employees. who work together to provide the best possible services. And tonight we have Mr. Ryan Streck. I'll have you come up to the podium.
Sure, I'll be brief.
And then when you're done, I'll have you walk across and shake my hand.
Good evening. Muscatine Power and Water is one of approximately 2,000 public utilities across the nation that collectively serve 49 million Americans. Public Power Week is an annual national celebration recognizing economic, social, and environmental contributions of hometown electric utilities like Muscatine Power and Water. Public Power Week honors the democratic tradition of community decision-making and participation that led to the founding of the electric utility, then called Muscatine Electric Light Company, back in 1922. As a not-for-profit utility owned and operated by the community, Muscatine is proud of the service we provide to our customers. And we cannot do that without the talented and dedicated staff we have, which I want to thank personally tonight. MPW has a track record of high reliability, low rates, and public service. Thank you, Mayor Bark, and council members for recognizing the benefits of public power and the value that MPW brings to the community. Thank you.
You guys represent MPW well.
Thank you for representing us.
Thanks, Ryan. Next proclamation is Proclamation for National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. Whereas the movement known as Orange Shirt Day, also known as the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, was started by Phyllis Webstad of the Sissemock Extim First Nation. Pretty good. Whereas Phyllis, like Indigenous children throughout the United States, attended an Indian residential school whose purpose it was to strip her of her language and culture. Many children in these boarding schools were subjected to a range of sexual, physical, spiritual, and emotional abuse, and many lost their lives. And whereas Native children were not allowed to speak their native language, wear their traditional clothing, or practice their cultural tradition, and were forced to have their hair cut by school officials. And whereas Iowa was home to several Indian boarding schools whose purpose it was to foreseeable assimilate Native children, it is acknowledged the legacy of legalized injustice and brutality toward Native children and their families. And whereas we must do more than just remember the children whose lives were taken, the countless families torn apart, and the communities ravaged by these cruel government-sanctioned practices. And we must acknowledge the generational trauma that exists and continues to impact Native people and their communities. And whereas after years of avoiding the color orange, which the Indian boarding school forbid her to wear, Phyllis created Orange Shirt Day to remember the children whose lives were lost at the hands of the boarding school system and to honor their survivors. Now therefore, I, Brad Bark, Mayor of Muscatine, do hereby proclaim September 30th of 2023 as Orange Shirt Day in Muscatine, Iowa. And I'm going to read one more proclamation, then I'll have Danny and Justice come up and say a few words. The next proclamation is a proclamation of Indigenous Peoples Day. Whereas the land known as the state of Iowa and our city Muscatine, Iowa, named in recognition of the Iowa tribe, as well as the language used to identify many of our lakes, rivers, cities, counties, schools, buildings, and considerably more, reflects the inherent imprint of Indigenous peoples. This land has been home to Indigenous peoples since the immemorial, and without whom the building of the state and city would not have been possible. And whereas Indigenous peoples have made essential contributions to the landscape of Iowa, including traditional knowledge, experience, labor, technology, science, philosophy, industry, arts, as well as their cultural belief system that stipulates Indigenous peoples as protectors and stewards of our natural environment for the benefit of all. And whereas the City of Muscatine is dedicated to eliminate racism towards Indigenous peoples and seeks to promote practices that honor the states of Indigenous roots, history, and contributions, and reflect the experiences of Indigenous peoples and ensure greater access and opportunity. And whereas the City of Muscatine joins a growing number of cities that have recognized the second Monday of October as Indigenous Peoples Day, creating an opportunity to promote appreciation, understanding, friendship, partnerships among Indigenous peoples and all Muscatine residents. And whereas the City of Muscatine will observe Indigenous Peoples Day as an opportunity to recognize and celebrate the history, culture, and contributions of Indigenous peoples in our community. Now therefore, I, Dr. Brad Bark, Mayor of Muscatine, do hereby proclaim October 9th, 2023 as Indigenous Peoples Day. Danny, Justice, I'll have you approach the podium. So we'll get a picture right away. Let's scoot over here real quick.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you all. My name is Justice, and this is Danny. We are the co-creators of the Indigenous Coalition of Muscatine. As Mi'kmaq women and generational survivors of residential schools, we accept this proclamation for National Truth and Reconciliation Day for September 30th, 2023. We hope this day will educate our community and the atrocities and the abuse that occurred at the residential schools throughout North America, and to create a safe space for knowledge and healing. Residential and boarding schools began operation in the 1800s and ran through the 1990s across the United States and Canada. There are 523 recognized boarding schools here in the United States, and 4 of them are right here in Iowa. The purpose of these institutions was to forcibly remove Indigenous children from their culture, language, homes, and families to assimilate them into modern society. An attempt to kill the Indian and save the child. Indigenous children were forced to endure not only physical, mental, sexual abuse, but also death. Many children did not survive the conformation and has since been discovered in mass unmarked graves. This proclamation not only acknowledges the survivors, but it also mourns the innocent. As the Indigenous Coalition of Muscatine, we aim to educate, advocate, and provide a safe space to talk about Indigenous culture. September 30th is a day to spread awareness of Every Child Matters.
Hello. We come to you today as many things. Representatives of the Indigenous Coalition, community members, and strong Mi'kmaq women. We appreciate this opportunity, and we see this as a token of appreciation, and we do really appreciate the acknowledgement. We urge everyone to use this day to create space to educate yourselves, and as to why we celebrate cultures and why that is imperative to peace, healing, and our community. We aim to create an open dialogue, educational opportunities, and healing. We hope that our community will see this as another way to embrace existing, albeit unknown cultures, so that we may celebrate our differences and see them as a means to acknowledge instead of a vessel for hate. We want to thank our board members that are attending this evening, our community members, our friends, and our family. Thank you for the continued support.
Thanks for teaching us. Thank you, Justice.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. Thanks for coming.
right, and our next proclamation. Whereas Latinos and Hispanics have enriched Iowa communities since the late 1800s and play a vital role in Iowa's economy and workforce with culture, educational, and political influences, this can be seen and appreciated in all aspects of life. Whereas it's worthy of note that Hispanics constitute an estimated 4,500 residents, making up 19% of Muscatine's population, marking it as one of the largest Hispanic communities in Iowa. These individuals, known for their entrepreneurial spirit, are instrumental in driving our economy and workforce, therefore fortifying Muscatine's economic vigor. And whereas the Latinos are individuals that are from or are descendants from Latin America and may speak Dutch, English, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, French, and many more languages. Whereas Hispanics are individuals that speak Spanish and are descendants from Spanish-speaking countries, including Spain. And whereas Latino and Hispanic Heritage Month is an opportunity to celebrate the vibrant traditions of peoples whose ancestry can be traced to the Caribbean islands, Central America, Mexico, South America, for Latinos, and Spain. And whereas Latinos enrich Iowa communities with culture, educational, and political influences that can be seen and appreciated in all aspects of our life, from skilled workers, artists, professionals, owners of vibrant businesses, and leaders, and as a community that offers education and community gatherings through art, music, and festivals. Now therefore, I, Brad Bark, Mayor of Muscatine, do hereby proclaim September 15th of 2023 through October 15th of 2023 Latino and Hispanic Heritage Month. And tonight we have Mr. Nick. I'll have you come up and accept the proclamation. Say some things and then after, yep, right here, and then after this, oh, another picture.
Ladies and gentlemen, members of the Muscatine City Council, Mayor, and distinguished guests and dear fellow citizens, thank you sincerely for gathering here today as we commemorate Hispanic Heritage Month, a time to celebrate the rich tapestry of cultures, traditions, and histories that the Hispanic community has intertwined with the spirited and vibrant story of Muscatine. Today, as I stand before you to accept this proclamation, I am filled with a profound sense of honor and responsibility. It is a testament to the long intertwined history that the Hispanic community shares with this illustrious city, a city that is a beacon of perseverance, unity, and shared dreams. Over a century ago, our predecessors arrived in Muscatine, their hearts brimming with hopes of aspirations. Through their sweat and toil, they helped build the foundations of the city that we now proudly call our home. From the riverbanks of the mighty Mississippi, they lent their hands and their spirits to construct not just buildings, but a community forged in the unity and mutual respect. These brave individuals and their descendants become integral threads in the vibrant fabric of Muscatine, contributing to the flourishing agricultural sector and invigorating the industries that have made the city a beacon of prosperity and innovation. Through decades of collaborative effort, we have seen the manifestation of the unique and harmonious blend of cultures, which has further enriched our community with the diverse and beautiful array of traditions, languages, and cuisines. As I stand here today, we remember and honor the contributions of the community to the economic, cultural, and social vitality of Muscatine. We pay homage to the artists who have added color and flair to our local canvas, the educators who have nurtured minds young and old, the entrepreneurs who have spurred economic growth, and the countless others who, in myriad ways, have played a role in shaping the thriving, diverse community we see today. But our commemoration today is not just a glance in the rearview mirror. It is an acknowledgement of the present and a promise for the future. It serves as a reminder that our work is never complete and that we must continue to foster an environment of inclusivity and respect where every citizen can thrive, irrespective of their background. Let us take this occasion to reinforce our commitment to solidarity, to nurturing the bonds that make us stronger together, and to provide and promoting a city where every individual feels at home, valued, and respected. Let's envision a future where the spirit of camaraderie and unity remains unshaken, a future that holds the promise of equal opportunities and mutual respect for all. As we celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month, let's also celebrate the spirit of Muscatine, a city built with the hope and perseverance of many, a city that embodies the true essence of community, diversity, and unity. In acceptance proclamation, I do so with unwavering faith in the spirit of Muscatine and its people, and with the heartfelt tribute of the Hispanic community that has contributed so immensely in shaping the city's glorious narrative. Thank you, Muscatine City Council, Mayor Brad Bark, for this recognition, and for standing as allies in this journey of continued growth and collaboration. Together, we forge ahead, honoring our past, cherishing our present, and envisioning a future where the city shines as a beacon of unity, diversity, and prosperity for all. Thank you.
All right. Next is the approval to adopt the agenda. Does the council or administration have any items they would like to change or pull from the agenda?
I have one item, Your Honor.
Yes.
Item 17E regarding a contract for the vehicle wash bay project. We have to pull that tonight because the contract was not ready by the time the agenda needed to be published. So we'll bring that forward at the next regular meeting.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved, Gordon.
We have a motion by Councilmember Gordon,
Second, Osborne.
second by Councilmember Osborne. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next item is communications. Is there anyone present that would like to address an issue that is not on tonight's agenda? Next item is a consent agenda. The following items are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence on the agenda. Is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda, which includes item 10A, item 11A, and then items 12A and B?
So moved,
So-
Gordon.
We have a motion by Councilmember Gordon
Second.
and a second by Councilmember Osborne. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Councilmember Gendrich? Aye. There we go. All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next item is a public hearing. Public hearing on plans, specifications, cost estimate, and form of contract for the downtown revitalization project. Now is the time for the public to comment. Hearing none, I will take a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved, Freilich.
We have a motion by Councilmember Freilich
Second, Lewis.
and a second by Councilmember Lewis. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries with all ayes. Next item is 17A, is a resolution approving the plan, specifications, form of contract, and cost estimate, and setting the bid opening for the downtown revitalization project, which is public hearing A. Is there a motion to adopt this resolution as submitted?
So moved, Osborne.
We have a motion by Councilmember Osborne
Second.
and a second by Councilmember Brockert. Is there any discussion with the public or the council?
I'd like to just, if I could, I'd just like to say that good work by the staff for finding this grant and bringing this to the downtown area. I hope it sparks beyond the current scope, but it's certainly a wonderful start.
I agree. Any other comments? Hearing none. Councilmember Lewis, how do you vote?
Aye.
Hopkins. Aye. Gordon.
Aye.
Freilich.
Aye.
Brockert.
Aye.
Gendrich. Aye. And Osborne.
Aye.
Resolution is adopted with all ayes. Next item is B, is a third and final reading of an ordinance amending Title III, Chapter 2 of City Code, use of city right-of-way. Is there a motion to adopt this ordinance on third and final reading and to direct for its publication as required by law?
So moved, Freilich.
We have a motion by Councilmember Freilich
Second, Gordon.
and a second by Councilmember Gordon. Is there any discussion with the public or council? Hearing none. Councilmember Lewis, how do you vote?
Aye.
Hopkins. Aye. Gordon.
Aye.
Freilich.
Aye.
Brockert.
Aye.
Gendrich. Aye. And Osborne.
Aye.
Third and final reading of this ordinance is approved as submitted with all ayes. Next item is C, is a third and final reading of an ordinance amending Title 11, Chapter 4 of City Code inspections. Is there a motion to adopt this ordinance, on third and final reading and to direct for its publication as required by law?
So moved.
We have a motion by Councilmember Brockert
Second, Lewis.
and a second by Councilmember Lewis. Is there any discussion with the public or council? Hearing none. Councilmember Lewis, how do you vote?
Aye.
Hopkins. Aye. Gordon.
Aye.
Freilich.
Aye.
Brockert.
Aye.
Gendrich. Aye. And Osborne.
Aye.
Third and final reading of this ordinance is approved as submitted with all ayes. Next item is D, third and final reading of an ordinance amending the Airport District zoning ordinance contained within Title 10, Chapter 19 of City Code. Is there a motion to adopt this ordinance on third and final reading and to direct for its publication as required by law?
So moved, Lewis.
We have a motion by Councilmember Lewis
Second.
and a second by Councilmember Gordon. Is there any discussion with the public or council? Hearing none. Councilmember Lewis, how do you vote?
Aye.
Hopkins.
Aye.
Gordon.
Aye.
Freilich.
Aye.
Brockert.
Aye.
Gendrich. Aye. And Osborne.
Aye.
Third and final reading of this ordinance is approved as submitted with all ayes. Next item is F. It's a resolution to amend City Code Appendix B sidewalk and excavation fees. Is there a motion to adopt this resolution as submitted?
So moved, Gordon.
We have a motion by Councilmember Gordon
Second.
and a second by Councilmember Freilich. Is there any discussion with the public or council? Hearing none. Councilmember Lewis, how do you vote?
Aye.
Hopkins.
Aye.
Gordon.
Aye.
Freilich.
Yes. Aye.
Brockert.
Aye.
Gendrich. And Osborne.
Aye.
Resolution is adopted with all ayes. You're throwing me off there. Next item is G, is a resolution approving the preliminary final plat of PMP First Edition. Is there a motion to adopt this resolution as submitted?
So moved, Lewis.
We have a motion by Councilmember Lewis
Second.
and a second by Councilmember Gordon. Is there any discussion with the public or council? Hearing none. Councilmember Lewis, how do you vote?
Aye.
Hopkins.
Aye.
Gordon.
Aye.
Freilich.
Aye.
Brockert.
Aye.
Gendrich. And Osborne.
Aye.
Resolution is adopted with all ayes. Next item is H, a resolution accepting completed work for the 67th Street Sidewalk Project and authorizing release of payment. Is there a motion to adopt this resolution as submitted?
So moved.
We have a motion by Councilmember Hopkins
Second.
and a second by Councilmember Brockert. Is there any discussion with the public or council? Hearing none. Councilmember Lewis, how do you vote?
Aye.
Hopkins.
Aye.
Gordon.
Aye.
Freilich.
Aye.
Brockert.
Aye.
Gendrich. And Osborne.
Aye.
Resolution is adopted with all ayes. Next item is a resolution approving second amended development agreement with R.L. Fridley Theaters, Inc. and Fridley Properties, LLC. Is there a motion to adopt this resolution as submitted?
So moved, Gordon.
We have a motion by Councilmember
Second.
Gordon and a second by Councilmember Freilich. Is there any discussion with the public or council? Hearing none. Councilmember Lewis, how do you vote?
Aye.
Hopkins.
Aye.
Gordon.
Aye.
Freilich.
Aye.
Brockert.
Aye.
Gendrich. And Osborne.
Aye.
Resolution is adopted with all ayes. Next item is J, is a request to issue change order number 3 to the West Hill Sewer Separation Phase 5 contract. Is there a motion to approve this request as submitted?
So move, Gordon.
We have a motion by Councilmember Gordon
Second.
and a second by Councilmember Hopkins. Is there any discussion with the public? Yes, I'd like to speak. Yep. Name and address, please.
My name is John Haggerty. I live at 2015 Mulberry. I'm also a contractor for the Phase 5 sewer separation job. I'm here tonight to speak with the city's proposed changes that removes the remaining work on Clymer Street between Logan and Lucas from Phase 5 of the West Hill sanitary sewer job. This postponement of necessary work will not save the city of Muscatine and its residents any money. It will actually increase the cost of the project, in my estimate, between $250,000 and $300,000 if the work was bid today. These costs will only rise in the future. To put it in perspective, we have approximately $700,000 in work remaining on a $6 million project at 2021 costs. And when that was when the project was bid. That $700,000, instead of then, today, costing $700,000, if you bid it again, it's going to cost roughly $1 million by postponing. Let me start with a little background. When this job was bid, it was generally intended to install a new sanitary sewer and leave the existing combined storm and sanitary sewer in place to be used as a new storm sewer. This was seen by Stanley Consultants in the city of Muscatine as a way to save money by repurposing the existing sewers and save the cost of replacing with new. Immediately upon starting construction, we, Public Works and myself, realized that many of the existing storm sewers that were intended to be left in place and reused were deteriorated to a condition that was unwise to be left under the new pavement. For example, the combined storm sewer on 8th Street that the city was intending to leave in place was constructed around or recorded on the map in the year 1916 and the other half 1918 or 1920. This is a 15-inch diameter, 100-year-old clay sewer that was intended to be reused and left in place under brand new paving.
30 seconds, John.
After investigating, and Public Works agreed it should be replaced, a significant change order from the original scope of the job. We removed 2 blocks of that sewer and replaced it with new reinforced concrete pipe structures in addition to the scope of the work. Over the course of the job, replacing combined storm and sanitary sewers were scheduled to be left in place and were started the requested changes. The job's original specifications intended only to hook up house laterals to the new main, leaving the old pipe in place with only a short section of new PVC pipe. This is
Mayor, the time is up.
Oh, time's up. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
John Schaefer, 2709 Bidwell Road. This job here, I'll just get to the end of it that John was talking about, that we estimated cost to complete this remaining work, this contract prices, that you were under contract with me today compared to today's inflated 2023 prices. It's approximately $250,000 to $300,000 more. I've heard that removed portion of the work would be added in the future contract, so I can only imagine the difference in pricing will only be even more inflated. Another brief fact to remind us is that the 21 houses of the residents directly involved in the remaining work on Clymer Street have not been affected by construction. They've had full access to their property in the entire course of this job so far. Regardless of who performs the remaining work on the Clymer, these residents have access to their property limited, but to the date, they have full driving access to and from their homes. With the drastic change in pricing of materials, labor, and services, as a contractor, I appreciate the council for relieving me of this contract burden by removing the remainder of this project. My subcontractors, thank you. My suppliers, thank you. We all can get prices of 21 that we greatly impacted with inflation. We can all have our chance to bid on this work again in the future when it is added to the scope of future phase. With increased margins and updating prices, that solution will be the best for use of public funds.
30 seconds.
As this will starkly increase the cost of residents of Muscatine. As a citizen of Muscatine,
I totally disagree with your decision to cancel the Maynard contract. This work is not a luxury item. It is mandated by the EPA to be completed. I believe it is foolish to remove this work from the contract for the reasons I stated, including the citizens of Muscatine would have better ideas on how to spend an additional $250,000 or more on the decision that it will cost. It's a lot of money, folks, a lot of money.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Council, any comments?
I have a comment.
Yes. Yeah, yes.
Okay. Don't know what assumptions were used, but sure, costs could probably go up. I'll say that, but this is less about costs than the public is asking us to do something different. And for me, that's what it's about. That's it.
Any other comments? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Request is approved with all ayes. Next item is K is request approval of updated Title VI policy, assurance and non-discrimination agreement. Is there a motion to approve this request as submitted?
So moved, Lewis.
We have a motion by Councilmember Lewis
Second.
and a second by Councilmember Gordon. Is there any discussion with council? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Request is approved with all ayes. Next item is L, is a request to approve a purchase agreement between the City of Muscatine and Muscatine County and J&S Dare Farms LLC in the amount of $420,000 for the purchase of real estate described in Exhibit A for the use of a law enforcement shooting range and training facility. Is there a motion to approve this request as submitted?
So moved, Lewis.
We have a motion by Councilmember Lewis
Second, Gordon.
and a second by Councilmember Gordon. Is there any discussion with the public? And if your name's not on here, if you want your name on here, I'll have you come up and add your name. If it's not, you will not be speaking. So the first one will be Tim Maxwell. Name and address, please.
Yes.
And we're
Tim
going to
Ma-
be given a minute and a half.
Okay, Tim Maxwell, 1444 North Isaac. Tonight I have questions. So I know you guys are obligated to your half, which would be $210,000. Is there a proposed budget for the rest of it, or anything else? What their proposal for this, for everything else they want to do on the land?
Do you want to answer questions, or do you want to wait until you have the discussion?
Let's wait until we have the discussion.
Well, that's basically all I got is questions.
Oh, I appreciate it.
Just keep asking.
asking.
Okay.
Keep asking.
What sources are you going to use to fund this project? And as the citizens of Muscatine itself, are they going to be taxed twice? Once because they're in the city and once they're in the county. Will they be taxed twice on this facility? And thirdly, or fourthly, or whatever I'm at, commissary funds. We've heard this from the supervisors. Apparently they're using some of this to fund their half. I'm sure are you guys going to use part of the commissary funds to fund your half? And is this what is intended for, I guess, is what my question is. So that's all I have. I just had questions.
Thank you, Mr. Maxwell. And now we have Devin Maxwell. Name and address, please.
Devin Maxwell, 2681 150th Street, Muscatine. I just have a few questions for the council. Will a bond be used for this to secure the funds for the project? Please explain how and how much. Would the bond receive a public vote to secure it? If a bond doesn't pass, have you guys thought about what's going to be done with this land if purchased if a bond doesn't pass? Do our elected officials have a physical responsibility to vote on behalf of their constituents to make the best use of our taxpayers' hard-earned dollars? Please describe how you have used physical responsibility with respect to this project with your voting to history. Per review of the design of the eligibility criteria written by the city engineer to Eric Furness, Planning, Zoning, and Environmental Administrator, it had no date. No date on this document. So our question is, was this done before or after voted on? And that 2/3 down the way in this paper, 2/3, it says it has been chosen the site. So this paper was written either before or after with we have no explanation of date of that. Why could the letter be written before? These are just concerns I wanted to bring up to you guys, of all of us standing out here. That's all I have. And we just like some answers of the process, I guess, from you guys. Thank you.
Do you live in the county?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you. Shannon Lewis. Name and address. Yep, right over here. And then we'll give you a minute and a half.
My name is Shannon Lewis. I live at 112 Van Horn Street in Muscatine, and our property is immediately behind the proposed location for this site. So where the pond is on the design, that would be immediately on our property line for our land. We own the 30 acres behind. So I also have a question in the letter that Devin took with him. So it is regarding the city engineers. It was written on Muscatine Public Works paper. It's publicly knowledge. It lists two different types of eligibility requirements for the design. One is for location and one is for site. And I wanted to ask, one of the eligibility requirements for the location is that the travel time for the Muscatine Police Department to the location must be 15 minutes or less. So is that a want, or is that part of a design eligibility criteria? So again, I wanted to make sure and ask for clarification if the design eligibility criteria was written specifically for the Muscatine Police Department, or if it was eligibility criteria before a search begins. So it seemed odd that that would be an eligibility criteria, or is that a want? There were 20 properties listed within 20, there were over 40 properties listed within 20 minutes, and then 19 within that many. In the site feature eligibility criteria, the NRA found that most noise complaints occur within a half a mile of a shooting range. And again, that criteria letter determined that the nearest dwelling was outside of that half-mile buffer. But I actually have a map of the half-mile buffer, and there are 3 homes, 3 dwellings within that half mile. So I brought that. So that is false. And then also on the site feature eligibility criteria, the recommended orientation is from south to north, which allows for the safest shooting for the shooter, but it mentioned nothing in the design criteria for where the bullets are heading, which is into our property. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Kim Schneider.
Kim Schneider, 1678 North Isaac Avenue.
What was that, 16 what?
78.
1678 North Isaac.
Isaac, Muscatine. Thank you. I'm also here just to kind of question the eligibility criteria letter. I've gotten a piece of paper here that says that I was in the top 10. It's my understanding that people were approached about this. I just wondered what the procedure was, because this is the first I'd heard about it 2 weeks ago, and I'm the 10th one that is eligible for the criteria, that met the criteria. So I'm wondering how that process went, how the money was determined, and I also would like to ask you as a board to be fiscally responsible to your taxpayers, because I don't feel this is the best way to go about this. I also recently discovered that there was another proposal made that would be a lot more fiscally responsible to the city, and it was turned down, which makes me wonder what the behind-the-scenes goals are for this project. And I would like to know how many were contacted and how they were contacted, when they were contacted. It's also important to me to say that I feel like with the county, which you aren't the county, but I hope that you're not a rubber stamp board that just goes with what you're told without investigating what your citizens and your constituents would like, and some of the truths that they feel are important.
30 seconds.
One last thing I would like to say is the safety. It had to be 2 miles from municipal, I can't say that word, but anyway, you know what I mean, municipality. And I guess I don't know who determines why it should be 2 miles from some people and not 2 miles from other people. What safety is more important? The person, if there's only 4 homes or if there's 40 homes, that bothers me a little bit.
Thank you, Ms. Schneider. Next, we have John Kramer. Name and address.
Hello, my name's John Kramer. I live at 1670 North Mulberry Road, Muscatine County. I just got questions for you then, since we're not going to talk about our opinions. Before purchasing, I would like to know in detail the description of the safety plan and procedure for this facility. There's much concern given the usage of this firing range. Has the city taken this fears into consideration to hold of detailed safety precautionary plan based on bullets, their trajectory? I know that snipers can shoot targets up to a mile long, and this facility, from what I hear, is like a 300-yard facility. So if someone shoots a little too high and there's people, children, or even livestock north of this property, the direction that they're shooting, you got to take in consideration their safety. So the safety plan needs to be devised before any purchase is done or anything, first and foremost, in my opinion. Are the purpose set limits, hours, or operation of this facility to prevent disruption to the people who live the quiet country life? For example, the Isaac Waltons, they used to shoot Tuesdays and Saturdays.
30 seconds.
They were shooting last night. Wednesday is not their day to shoot, but I understand that schools are shooting out there now, so I never received any letters on that or any changes. What are the purpose hours of operation for this facility? Per Sheriff Quinn Reese, his employees can and will go out and use the outdoor firing range whenever they can, at will, and some could be after 10 p.m. This would be very disruptive for the country people out there. As you can see, a lot of us care.
Time's up.
So,
Thank you.
I appreciate you guys' time today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer. Laura Curtis Kramer. Name and address.
Laura Curtis Kramer, 1670 North Mulberry Road. Just want to thank you for, I know you've probably put some time into researching all of this, and I appreciate that. We all appreciate that. I hope that everyone is doing their due diligence to make sure the right decisions are made in finding the appropriate location. I don't know if it's been done, but I think it would be wise to reach out to local business, industrial business and manufacturers. They have a lot of land. Maybe they would have something that would be more appropriate than this area. I also would be interested in seeing if there's been serious in-depth evaluation done on the water table and how the lead contamination would affect that water table out there. There's livestock streams that run through there, and from what I understand, it's a high water table, so the lead contamination is really concerning to me in the area. Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron Steffens. Name and address, please.
Aaron Steffens, 2528 150th Street, Moscow. Just want to echo all the thoughts of my neighbors out there once again, and very concerned with the noise, the safety issues out there with shooting so close to our houses. I know you guys can't see this very well, but this is a map. It's a 1 mile radius of the proposed shooting range and all the homes around it. There's, I believe, about 28. Mine is about a half mile away. So very close. I'm the one with 4 kids out there. We're always in the timber, always out walking around. And the safety concern is huge. Mr. Nick talked about being valued and respected in your community. We all want to feel safe. That's my community out there, and I want to feel safe out there as well. So thank you for your time again. really appreciate you guys listening, and I hope you bring your human side of it. Maybe take your business side hat off for a little bit and think about the humans out there, and think about the safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Steffens. And the last speaker is David Cooper.
David Cooper, 2319 Salisbury Road. My concerns mainly are, this seems to be something that, I've sat here and watched you guys conduct business all night, and nobody come up and said anything about all the money you're spending, and maybe that's happened otherwise. And you have a lot of people here that live out there in the country that are very concerned about this. From what I've seen on social media, YouTube, the CSR was brought up in one of the meetings. And I kind of think that maybe it sounds like to me you're using eminent domain to get this. One of the other things was travel to another area to do this has been going on. They said that in another meeting, you know. So I wonder why maybe the state of Iowa doesn't need to come up with an area centrally located in the state for this purpose, as opposed to another gun range in our area. I do live down from the other one behind Kramer's, and it does affect the quality of your life. Horses, dogs, other animals that don't like the shooting, and I do understand that they do need this facility somewhere, the training. I would just like for you guys to look at the people's lives this is affecting. I don't see anybody else coming up here when you're spending all this money.
30 seconds.
And I've seen this over and over in different meetings. The other thing really quick is City Council, I heard on one of the meetings that they're waiting on the zoning board. Well, actually, the zoning board could all vote no, and City Council still pass it. So I think there's some facts that we need to get the I's dotted and the T's crossed, okay? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Council, do you have any questions? Any? Councilmember Brockett.
To Mr. Cooper's point, most of the spending that we approve here has already been discussed in our budget deliberations that are open to the public, but for some reason, nobody shows up. And we need to change that for people to be more informed on what we are doing.
Well, I have a lot of appreciation for what you guys do.
Thank you.
Any other comments from council? Councilmember Osborne.
Okay. I think it's important to understand where we're at in this process. The headline says in our notes that we're voting for a purchase agreement. That purchase agreement is contingent on a lot of things. Primarily, the next step would be the zoning board voting yes or no. Beyond that, this council will have 3 more hearings on this for additional public input. I'm sure the county has a similar process where they will have that kind of hearing type process to gain more input. Some of the questions that are out there have been discussed in closed meetings, and due to the nature around closed meetings, eventually that information will be disclosed, but at this point in time it cannot. Other information will be flushed out in this later process. But I can say that, you know, some of the concerns around safety and noise are being addressed with the NRA guidelines. Have 8-foot beams, berms around the shooting area. We're going with 20-foot berms around it, planting trees around it. And I'm not talking about this specific site. I'm just talking in general, that's the plan. So noise and stuff will be above and beyond the NRA guidelines for this facility wherever it's located. As far as environmental goes, there has been an environmental study. There's guidelines on that too. The retention pond will have a liner underneath it and all kinds of stuff like that. Again, not specific to this site, but it's part of the design. I'm just seeking to help answer some of your questions. I mean, I see folks shaking their head as if I'm talking about this specific site, but This is general design criteria, and some of this stuff has been flushed out. Although not all of it, like I said, this is a process. As far as doing our homework goes, well, first of all, I want to say thank you for showing up. The passion and the folks being engaged, as Nadine had said, we're always wanting that. Unfortunately, it kind of comes when people are a little bit unhappy with might be going on. Coming to the earlier meetings, I think, would be helpful so that it wouldn't be such a surprise or however this unfold.
Sir, order.
I do want to share that I take very seriously listening to the public. All of us here took an oath to that effect to follow the Constitution of Iowa and a bunch of other things, but primarily it means to me we're making a commitment and under oath to go with the public. Well, in my case, I usually frame it as my read on the public desires. You know, I play an important role in democracy, you know. I vote what folks in my area, or at least generally in the community, my read again of what people want, not what I want. There is no hidden agenda here. The agenda is have our officers get trained and make our community safe. That said, it's a bit of an art form. It's not just what's said in this room. There's emails, there's conversations, there's a general comment that nobody here has ever said we don't want to train our officers. Okay, so that being said, that's the most important thing. And it's got to be somewhere. Okay? I did talk to the chief about some of the criteria, and I asked, you know, why this site? You know, this site, first of all, let me get a little grounded in the distance of a half mile starts from the shooting pit, not the boundaries of the lot. Okay? So when you go to that, this has, of the 19 sites that were deemed available, this had a few, and the others all had more. So when it comes to disrupting people's lives, the other sites had more people closer to the shooting pit. I will share that. The cost per acre comes down to negotiations. You know, when you're looking for a site, you know, we're comparing it to market rate places that are being sold, that are up for sale. This is not one of those. None of these sites are those. None of these sites were for sale. That's a different apples and oranges comparison. When you have to approach an owner and say, would you sell, that changes everything. You know, it's not like we're going out and looking at 10 different houses that were already on the market.
Excuse me, Jeff.
So that's it in a nutshell. Just some thoughts.
Yeah, can we, I mean.
Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know that any of us have other discussions, but if we have specific questions that we need to have a resource poll up and answer those, I mean, this could go on for a while as to how much we've researched, but I'd like to see if we can move forward. If we need to bring forward somebody as a resource to validate some of the questions, I don't know if this is the time, but I just wanted to have us move on if we could.
Yep, and that's what I said. I'm done.
Well, I'm happy to answer a few of them anyway. In regards to how the city is funding the project, we are issuing bonds for the project. It will be part of our normal bonding schedule. We program projects in so that we can bond around the same amount each time we issue bonds. It will not go to a vote. We're able to issue that geodebt. This is a replacement facility. We previously closed a firing range, and so we're replacing it, and so it will not require a public vote. The city doesn't have commissary funds, so that's a county question. And I don't know, I also can't answer the question about if the city taxpayers are paying twice, because I'm not well acquainted with how the county is paying for it. I think it depends largely on how it's being funded. The letter that our engineer, the city engineer, sent, it was to discuss the rationale that was used for screening criteria and for site design. This work began a long time before these potential sites were identified. It was not a process of locating sites and then identifying criteria to fit those. And there's definitely, you know, a lot of documentation that supports that. What other questions did they have? As far as the occupied dwellings, as Councilmember Osborne mentioned, those distances can vary depending on from where folks are measuring. The occupied dwellings, there are 3 that are within 1/3 of a mile to about 1/2 a mile from the proposed location. Regardless, as you know in some of the county zoning commission materials, that public ranges, which this range is not subject to, but public ranges are required to be at least 750 feet from any habitable dwelling, and we meet that criteria. However, a range of this type, government range for local law enforcement, is exempt from that requirement. Let's see. I think that's the bulk. Some of what Councilmember Osborne mentioned around there are many additional meetings to discuss. This is just the purchase of the property, which I'll mention too. We are not exercising eminent domain. We have a willing seller. You only use that when you don't have a willing seller. So we are not utilizing that tool. As far as the complete design and the operation of the facility, we will have hearings and readings that will go along with making this public improvement. So
I just had one more comment to add to Carol's criteria. Is you know, there was a comment about why 2 miles away from a city, and the standard seems different here. The reason this site, well, in general, close to the city is more likely to develop into housing and other things that would grow around something like this. The score, a lot's been made about the score that makes it farmland and therefore not buildable for housing and stuff like that. That actually makes this property a little bit more desirable because it's very much less likely to have development on it that would be disturbed by a shooting range as opposed to something that's close to a city. It's not really that folks are more important in a city than in the country or anything like that. It just has to do with the way the land is used and what's most likely to happen around it in the future.
do you have other questions that you would like? If you want to go deeper on any of those, I have the city engineer here that can speak to some of those items, but I think for now, this is the beginning of the process. It's not the end by any means. We're just starting that conversation around how it will be constructed and operated.
Any other comments?
I want to echo and emphasize what Carol said. As I said from the beginning, this is the beginning. And a lot of this detail will be worked out as we go along. There'll be more opportunity for public input and all of that. And there's every fork in the road, if there's a no, it's done on this property and we start over.
Any other comments from council?
I just have one, Mayor. I do want to say thank you for coming and speaking to us. I tell you, this last week has probably been, for all of us, I think we'll all say we've spent time with key people that we needed to talk to. I'm sure the poor chief has had nonstop visitors at his door, spending hours with us, kind of going through the process that he had to go through. Many hours have gone into this process before it got here. I don't want you to think that all of a sudden he's here and it's like, okay, this is what we want, push it through. That's not what happened. There's been many discussions. I can tell you that as a community, and I consider the county part of our community, we've heard you. But we also have other people that we've heard from as well. And safety is our number one priority. I want you to know that you've been heard. We understand. We have done our due diligence that we need to do to make a decision. And thank you.
Any other comments? Hear none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Councilmember Gendrich? Councilmember Gendrich, do you vote aye?
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Nay.
Request is approved with 6 ayes and 1 nay. And I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
All right, we'll take 5 minutes to take a break, then we'll get into in-depth. Can you join?
Okay.
Welcome to the September 14th, 2023 in-depth city council meeting. Cindy, will you please do the roll call?
Councilmember Freilich.
Present.
Councilmember Osborne.
Present.
Councilmember Gordon.
Present.
Councilmember Brockert.
Present.
Councilmember Lewis.
Present.
Councilmember Hopkins.
Present.
Councilmember Gendrich. 6 present, 1 absent, Your Honor.
Great. Will you please stand again for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I was thinking this was important.
All right, we have 4 in-depth discussion items, and tonight the first one is 4A, is a presentation and discussion on city wayfinding project. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Brian Steinman, Public Works Director. As some of you will recall, we had a request for proposals quite some time ago, selected a firm to do a wayfinding master plan for the community. We've invited Corbin Design to come back tonight to give you an update on where they are so far. So Jeff Frank is here with Corbin Design. I'm going to turn it over to him shortly, but he will go through his presentation, and then we'll have, it's mostly for information purposes. If you have any questions, he'd be happy to answer those. At the end, we do have, if the community is aware, we had 2 choices, if you will, or concepts that the public had a chance to vote on. We can show you the results of that poll if you'd like. And then the only thing we would ask for council is if you're confident that you want to go in one direction or the other, we would give that direction to Corbin Design, and they will go from there. But Jeff will get into more detail about what's all involved, what's been involved, and how it's worked. So Jeff, it's all yours.
City Council Mayor, thank you for having me tonight. Yes, super excited to show you the progress we've made over the several months working on this. We have designs to show you. We've presented it to the community, and we have feedback. So that's really exciting. But I'm going to go back just a little bit and bring everyone up to speed on the kind of process that got us to where we're at today. So just really quickly, when we're talking about wayfinding, I just want to explain what that is, just in case folks need some clarity. Wayfinding is, in a sense, signage, right? But it's not DOT signs. It's custom signs designed for the community. It's everything else that you want to direct. Am I good?
Is your microphone
down?
Pull your mic down. It's hard to hear, yes.
Good? Good,
Better.
okay. It's a system for directing people to your community that you want to, right? What destinations, what routes, how do we greet them? When do they know, how do they know they've arrived? It's more than just, green and white signs that the DOT develops. So for us, we just define it here as a couple different definitions. One is it's direction for people in motion. So we want to provide information to folks in a simple way, announce arrival, direct to key destinations. In some cases, we direct to areas and zones. We keep it simple and easy to understand. That's the key thing for us. The other thing that a system that we're developing here will do is contribute to a sense of place. So we say branding sometimes. So branding is a logo. That's an easy way to do it. I'll show you how these signs are branded to the community. So they reflect aspects of the history, the culture, the environment are built into the sign, so your visitors can see a story that's built into these signs. And if you know, and I'll kind of walk you through kind of the little Easter eggs that are hidden in there, as a community member, I think you'll understand and you'll see and take pride in the small elements that are incorporated in here because you know what they mean and how they've contributed to the success of the community. Just for clarity, I don't represent a sign company. I don't build signs. I don't sell by the sign. I want fewer, better signs. So it's not about quantity. It's about quality. We want the signs to do more work. We want them to function with more capabilities rather than just adding more signs. So part of our experience here is that graph off to the right-hand side there. Really, let's focus on that orange circle, half circle. It's called the wayfinding logic. So that really dictates where signs go, what they say, how big they need to be. We all do that because we want to address the sort of those circles around the outside, which is when people prepare for a visit, what are they looking for? What destinations, what research have they done? We want to direct them with directional signs, identify signs on the arrival, and make sure that the signs, the destinations we're directing to have sufficient identification signs when they get there. And we want to inform them of more experiences, more destinations. We want them to stay longer. So this is something that we talk about, sort of what is the value of a wayfinding sign and what does it bring? For us, our systems do a couple things. One, they promote a positive reaction to the environment. So when you get there, oh, I found my way around easily. I found the destinations I was looking for. That contributes to a less stressful, more enjoyable time. We also, our systems will also expose you to additional destinations while you're visiting. So it creates awareness. Wow, I didn't know that was here or that was this close. Maybe that prompts them to extend their visit, go and find a destination. Or let's say I'm walking downtown, I've got a little bit of time to kill. Wow, there's a pedestrian kiosk with a map on it. Oh, I can do shopping all up and down here. There's restaurants and bars and some opportunities here. I want to go to the riverfront. I want to do all these things. So a wayfinding system can really help connect the visitor to the community more. In our analysis, what we've done is gone ahead and created a destination list. So off to the right here is basically everything that we're going to be directing to in the system. There are two parts to this. One is the vehicular system, and that has limited number of destinations because they need to be public destinations. They need to be open year-round. They need to be have associated parking. They need to have these kind of core elements to them. As we get to the pedestrian system on the pedestrian kiosks, that opens up a bigger pool of destinations to include. We've got this. We're working on this analysis here where it's not quite finished yet. We do have some location plans and message schedules that we have submitted a draft to the city. It's still being in development, but just wanted to show you kind of the research that went into developing the sign, how we determine the locations and the messaging. Once we have the messaging, we plot them on a map and we create circulation routes. We basically connect all those destinations to one another. So first thing is easy. We want to greet and welcome you. So that'll include welcome signs when you transition over. We want the positive experiences that folks are having here to be attributed to Muscatine, right? So we want them to tell their folks. So when they come back here, they say, you know, Muscatine's a great place. We had an awesome time. It was easy to find the destinations. And here's some things you need to do while you're there. So those circulation routes will connect you to those destinations. That is key destinations throughout the community, as well as directing you to downtown. So getting folks who are outside of downtown, making sure they don't bypass down, getting them downtown to the businesses, getting the downtown folks back out to the destinations outside of downtown as well, so that we can cross-connect those areas. And then we also, so in terms of just bringing you in, we also recirculate you. So we also, in our systems, like to create loops so we can recirculate you back to other destinations. This is the beginning of our circulation and location plan. We have a specific one for downtown too, and it takes into account the destinations as well as the existing signage. So we know you've made a substantial investment in those current signs right now, and they're beautiful, and we want them to continue doing or functioning the way that they were designed, which is more of an interpretive way. Our signs are wayfinding. They'll provide a map, pedestrian guide information. That's their function, to get you to destinations, hopefully to extend your stay and spend some more time. That's the utility part. That's the research that went into the locations. As I said before, the branding is a huge portion of this. So besides doing the homework on the one end, we are also looking at the creative portion on the other end. And to that end, we created a number of different concepts. In the end, what we've done is we've created this kind of inspiration kind of matrix here. So instead of taking one direction with our inspiration, think of it as that circle is what we're shooting for. What can we get in terms of history, nature, and the built environment? That in terms of historic and current architecture, how can we get all of those things into that circle? So in the two design concepts we're going to show, sort of varying degrees of how much we can squeeze one or the other without pushing one of those inspiration elements out. But this is the core design elements that we were looking for. We've named these just so to make it quick and easy to differentiate the two. This one's called Architecture and Interpretive, and I'm just going to show you the rough sketch first, and then we'll move into the more finalized design. So initially, our sketch here was our effort in incorporating historical elements and blending in with the existing architecture. So we've got these beautiful building facades. We wanted to take some of that design element, that intricacy. Thank you. And bring that to the signs. We know a lot of attention and detail went into building these design elements for these buildings, and we want that same level to be reflected back in the signage. We also wanted to pay homage to the formation of the community, like what inspired the first residents here. And we really harkened back to the mussels. But it's a difficult theme to incorporate in the sign. So we wanted to do it in kind of an abstract way. So on the right image is the back side. You'll see we've got these kind of striations, and they're taking inspiration from the shell, but they're also kind of abstract. If you go right below the shell, you see the sunset. They're also kind of inspired a little bit by kind of the color gradients in the sunsets as well. So that was really just our inspiration page. As we move forward and kind of develop that out into a sign type, this is really what it became to look like. So as we're looking here, we're looking at front, side, and back. So for us, it's always, the most important part is the utility. So that gray area with the messages on it has to function. Visitors have to be able to see it and read it. Its copy is sized for the road speed so that it's not too small. You can be able to see it and read it at the appropriate time to make sure you can make your turns. It's also reflective. So when headlights hit it, it works at night just as well as it works during the day. So what else can we use to convey that branding? It's everything around it and then the back. So that framing structure on there is, we internally we're calling it sort of a marquee. It's a way of kind of highlighting that information and emphasizing it. We wanted to reinforce the Muscatine identity across the top. And then we have a space on the bottom. You can see where we have the logo there, place for a logo anyway, the current one at the bottom. That's a changeable piece, so if that ever changed in the future, it could function without it. It could be replaced. And then on the back side is where we had that sort of interpretive piece. It may be a little bit difficult to see, but if you look at the side elevation, you'll see there's some thickness to that sign. It's not just a flat panel. It's because that panel is actually curved. And that was our way of connecting into that mussel shell, which is like, how do we put everything doesn't have to be angular. How do we put some softness and a curve to it? So it's actually curved from left to right, and then you can see our gradient, which again is inspired by the mussel shells, but also has a bit of a sunset incorporated into there as well. Here's a better example of kind of seeing what that detail might look like on the back. Here's a three-dimensional model. And so we can kind of see with the front, you can see there's a little bit of dimension between the different design elements, and then the back piece. What that curved back panel does functionally is it hides that post that runs up the center, so you don't see an ugly just signpost running up the middle. It looks like a finished structure. We know that's not going to be practical at every single location, so what we've got here is, think about some of the higher speed roads. We're going to need to meet more of a DOT requirements for there in terms of the breakaway, and honestly, in terms of the speed, you don't appreciate that level of detail on that smaller sign. So this previous sign here is for road speeds within downtown. As we get outside of downtown, some of the higher road speeds, it'll be this sign. This way we still have our standard DOT breakaways. This should make it easy for us to get DOT permitting to put it on the right of way if we need to. And then we have that header element as a separate portion that's attached to it. We still get our colors, and we still get our general layout. Let's get back here. And then, as I mentioned before, the pedestrian kiosk downtown. These will be additional kiosks that are placed at strategic locations to capture sidewalk traffic. And here you can see it's got a sort of dual function here. At the bottom is a full map that'll orient you with a "you are here," major destinations, walking distance, how far is it from downtown to the riverfront, to other destinations along there, walking distance in minutes, so you can kind of use that as a planning tool. And then the top portion is a directional sign that also has the destinations, key destinations listed on there, and off to the right is walking distance in minutes. The idea is that we don't want you to pull your phone out if you don't have to. We want you eyes up and engaged in the environment. We want to curate the story that's being told to people, not have Google do it for you. So this is an opportunity for us to highlight the destinations and the route and show people just how close things are without them looking at a blue dot and following a line on their phone. Here are the three sign types together to show you kind of roughly size and scale to one another. You can see the difference between the center sign, which is for lower speeds, and we go from 4 inches to 6 inches, what that does to the sign. So again, we've kept the cost down on the larger sign because of the square footage, and because, again, you're not going to appreciate that at higher speeds. And then you can see we've increased the header size. We've got a second concept we call river nature. So we really leaned into kind of pushed the architecture out and leaned into the nature a little bit more here. We wanted to make that connection. Our inspiration really came from more organic forms and shapes, something very artistic. We wanted to create something beautiful, something that was completely unique to the community and that would be memorable and maybe something that people stop and take their picture with. Or if it's in the in the background of photographs when people are downtown, they're going to recognize that as a uniquely Muscatine feature. And so that was this, off to the left-hand side. Let's see, the two images there. You can see the left is the front, the right is the back. And the back is where we put a lot of those design features in there. The idea was to create this kind of illustration that incorporates a lot of different design elements. And I will get a little bit closer to those in a second here as we show the more detailed version. So here's the next iteration of that. You can see the messaging, same functionality as the previous sign type. None of that's going to change. What does change is the construction. So we've got the 3 message panels on the front, and on the back side is that more sculptural shape. And then that has the pattern on the back side. And within that pattern, there are some unique elements. So I don't know if I could point. Yeah, I mean, I can. So starting at the bottom, we've got these 2 shapes. These are mussels in the bottom of the river. They're slightly opened. We've got a lily pad here at the top. We've got these scroll work here, and inside here are 2 little buttons that are hidden inside of here. And then we have a dragonfly across the top. And then we have this really beautiful kind of grass-like structure. Is that, is that based on the architecture? Is it based on the river? Or on the architecture, agriculture and the river, maybe both. It's a way of kind of bringing all those elements together in one cohesive design. And then we've got a unique treatment for the Muscatine identity. So you can see we've got the text, and then we reinforce that with incorporating Iowa in there as well. So it's a standalone piece. Just like the previous design, if we move forward, then we have an element that we can break out and use as a header across different sign types. And then if we go downtown and we look at the pedestrian kiosk again, what we've done is we've taken those design elements, we've blown them up in a more abstract way, and we've got still some of the same elements. Here's the mussel, and it stops here at the very top is a little button that ends a little curly Q here. And then here's our, is it a crown? Is it a lily pad? It could be interpretive. It's a design element that caps off the structure. And then here's what those 3 sign types look like together. So in the past 3 weeks, this has been up for community input, and the last time that we checked in, there was a clear winner, clear selection, and it was this second concept here, and it was 66% versus 33% on the previous one. And the last time I checked, it was over 600, which is a lot of input. So we've had cities 4 times this large and not received 600 people interested in providing their thoughts. So we're really super happy with that. And I think based on it's not a 50-50 vote, there was a clear winner here in terms of selection for folks. I hope that's because the elements resonate with them more, which is exactly what we wanted. Just in case you wanted to kind of look and talk about them side by side, here are the 2 design elements just so you can do a compare and contrast. Any questions, thoughts, concerns before I move on to the next portion? Yes.
Let's go on to the next portion.
Okay.
Let's see. And
We
hold
just
our
go up,
questions.
continue,
I
and then
think
we'll
so.
come back? Okay. So just in our existing plan right now, we've got a total of 58 signs. So we've broken them apart by sign type. And so we've got, as I mentioned before, vehicular guides, number of different sizes. You can see 4-inch versus 6 inches. We included just for one, because we're not doing a full municipal identification plan, but we do want to identify, create a sign type for that. So you'll have that as part of the system too. We'll have welcome signs, which are to be determined, to be developed still, but based on the inspiration or the concept that's selected. And then right now we have 7 pedestrian kiosks. Most are in downtown, but we have a couple placed strategically at Sports Complex, a couple other locations as well, so we can spread those out throughout the community. So that's what I have to show you today.
Any questions? Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Jeff, they're beautiful designs. I don't doubt that at all. They have a very Art Deco feel. I mean, they're stunning. My one concern is, you sort of alluded to it, we've already invested in some signage on Mississippi Drive and such. And what considerations did you take to sort of blend some of those designs? Those are very hard surface, squarish.
Yeah.
These are very soft. So, because we can't have 3 brands throughout the city.
Yes.
And that's what seems to be happening. So how do we make that blend a little better?
Yeah.
And work on these beautiful pieces of art?
That's a great, great question, and something that we considered very thoughtfully, I think. So what we want to do is blend those 2 elements together. And so what we did here is, so in our initial analysis of it, yes, they're very rectangular, they're very sharp-edged, they've got stone built into them, and this is a softer approach. So we're going to do 2 things and kind of merge these 2 elements together. One is we've taken in both of these designs, it's difficult to see here, but these are Core 10 posts. Well, this one in particular right here is a Core 10 post, and we can do Core 10 in this one as well. And there's a Core 10 structure. So the Core 10 is the rusting steel that is used on the existing signs right now. So the finishes translate over. And that was one of the key things that we wanted to make sure. So if they're in close proximity, they feel like they're part of the same, they belong together. And then what we're going to do now is, once we have, now that we have direction for this second design, is that we're going to look at some of those locations, especially downtown where we've got the welcome signs, the current welcome signs, the stone ones, the vertical ones, is bring some of this design element over to those to translate some of this onto those. We've got a new location, the south of town, which hasn't been finalized yet, and that's going to be another place to bring this more softer design out and merge it to the existing stone columns that are being built out there. So we're going to merge the 2 pieces together.
And decidedly, you chose not to use our corporate colors, our brand colors, which are, it's more of a softer sagey green and ivory. I don't know what our thoughts are because we just selected brand colors again 4 years ago, probably. I don't know that we're emotionally attached, but I think we need to, I mean, this is going to be the face of Muscatine for the pedestrians. We've got some differences on the website. We've got some what is our plan going to be?
We did provide them with the color palette that we use on the website.
Okay.
That was provided to them, and that's how they integrated it. So I don't know if these are complementary colors, but they did have that to work from, yes.
Complementary colors is a great way of saying it. So these are the difference between some of the branding websites and print materials is those are great for screens and print. We need to look at a higher contrast level and more desaturated colors for the exterior environment. Our systems are designed to last 10 to 20 years. So we want fast colors, or when they do start to inevitably fade, we want them to still look good over a long period of time. So that's part of our kind of coordination between melding the 2 design elements together. And yes, there's a distinct difference between this and your branding effort, because this, again, is designed to last much longer than that. Potentially, this could last indefinitely. You could refinish these signs in 20 years, which we've had a lot of communities do, reface and refinish, and the structures can continue to live on. So that's why we built them or designed the elements to be more based on physical things and culture and the environment and history. That's never going to change.
So it appears the river and nature won with 66% of the population that voted. Does council agree with that? Consensus agree with that with council to? They also like that one as well. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. You had a question.
Just got a couple of comments on the leading one there that folks would want on. Number one, when we tried to mess around with, I mean, the one on the right doesn't have anything about the starburst in it, correct? That's the little symbol at the bottom of the one on the left?
Correct.
When we tried to mess with that in another attempt at branding, we got tons of feedback that people like that.
Okay.
My recommendation would be that the lily flower that's at the top of that underneath the blue teal moniker, maybe that becomes that star in there. Second, the white against that lighter teal color. I mean, I can read Muscatine on the left from here. I can't read it on the right, so maybe a darker. And then lastly, I like Core 10 steel. It's great. It's low maintenance. It's inexpensive. It looks great, in my opinion. Some people don't like it. However, there is one problem. It runs. We've got Core 10 steel in our crosswalks downtown, and some of them are bleeding out into the street. And so from that standpoint, they might match the downtown, which I don't like that. What can you do to
Yes,
make sure it doesn't bleed out into the sidewalk?
Thank you for bringing that up. So this is two parts. One is, you're absolutely right. Zero maintenance on this. If they get scratched and chipped, you don't have to do anything to. So vehicular signs, it makes more sense because you're not likely to touch those. They're usually in grass. There's a little chance. Generally, and we have used this kind of Core 10 finish before in pedestrian kiosks, we do a full finish. So it'll be a painted, textured finish that looks like Core 10, but it's an aluminum construction.
Oh, okay.
And then we seal it.
All right.
So that way you get the Core 10 steel look finish right from day one. Instead of waiting for it to age and get the patina, you get it and it stays.
But it's an aluminum, kind of
It's
a fake
aluminum
patina.
construction, yeah.
All right.
And as we move forward, we'll provide samples. In fact, both of these, well, either one, the selected design still needs development. So there's still room for refinement of the designs that we have here. As you said, maybe there's a chance to talk about putting the starburst in. Where might that be? Is there a bigger opportunity on the pedestrian kiosk to include that? Absolutely. And then the next, just in terms of the next steps for us, is I showed you that list of sign types in the last slide here. We haven't designed all this. I'm only showing you 3 sign types from that. So we need to design all of those other sign types and then put construction details. So part of our contract calls for, we call them design intents. It's basically everything that the bidders would need to bid these apples to apples. All construction details, finishes, materials, specifications for the Core 10 or the full Core 10, all that would be in there.
Can I say something, Mayor?
Yes, you can.
I love it the way it is. Don't change a thing. I like the fact that, like, on the Concept 2, because it's like with the lily. When you look at it from the back, you get the beautiful lily with the shells on the bottom. When you have the destination over it, if you look at it, conceptualize, it's our starboard, or it's the symbol that we have on our shirts normally, where it's like the sunrise with the
We can get a little closer to that, yeah.
sunset, right.
Sunset, yeah.
So I love it because that's what I see when I look at it. So I wouldn't change a thing.
That's fantastic. I want to say that we built that in there to look exactly
Mm-hmm.
like that. If we didn't, this is why it's interpretive.
There you
It's
go.
that elements that we want you to see in there. It's exactly how it's supposed to work.
So then I'll ask the question again, Council. The public, like Concept 2, is the consensus, do you back that, their decision as well?
I think that's what we represent.
All right.
Yes.
Even though I voted for the other one.
Majority rules.
But now that I see the intent of the muscles on the back of the first one, I thought that was very cool.
Yeah.
But I voted for 2, so.
Yeah.
All right.
Do we need anything else this evening?
No, I don't believe so. I think Jeff was just looking for some direction and wanted to give you the update of where we are to date. So it's more informational, but this is going to help them to be able to move forward and start designing the future aspects. And then if we need to, we can have them come back and do a display before, or we can share those with you guys at a future point. But they've got a lot of work to do now, so.
I'd like to see the real colors other
Yep.
than the photographic colors. I
Absolutely.
think-
Yeah,
That'll be part of this, yeah.
In fact, as we get a little bit further down, what we could probably do is print out that back size full size so we can see it big and in color. And
I'm just
Thank
glad
you
you
for being
weren't stranger
patient
danger.
too, waiting for this time right here. So.
No, thank you. This is, it was a challenging evening, and I
Yeah.
wasn't sure how this is going to shake out for me.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item is B, is a discussion on potential relocation of dredge spoil dewatering operation from the Hawkeye site. Hawkeye Lumberyards.
One we've all been waiting for.
Yeah.
Where are we gonna put the mud?
Have a safe drive back.
Flooding.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just ready to go to sleep.
Mayor, Council, tonight going to be presenting on the potential relocation of the dredge spoil dewatering operations from the Hawkeye site. The direction we're looking for from you is the City Council desire for staff to prepare a preliminary plan, cost estimate, and options for funding the relocation of the dredge spoil dewatering operations. And right there's kind of a picture where it's currently taken. I'm going to kind of go over the background, going to talk about how we could potentially relocate it and what the opportunities that would create and what goals that would advance and what the potential next steps would be, then final kind of see what your consensus on a direction for staff would be. So the site's known as the Hawkeye site. It's a 2.75 acre site. It's located there on 2nd Street, kind of between the bridge over the Mississippi and Mad Creek. It's kind of outlined in red there, and there's also a picture of it down there. The site was purchased by the city in 2004. Prior to that, it was used for over 100 years as a lumber yard. It is currently frequently impacted by flooding. Do need to acknowledge that. In 2004, as part of a larger package of riverfront improvements, the city assumed full control and responsibility for the harbor from the federal government. At this time, the city purchased a dredge, and also the Hawkeye site is a site to dewater the spoils generated by dredging operations. So just this way, a little background, the harbor's dredged by using a floating hydraulic dredge that's operated by Water Resource and Recovery Facility staff. What comes off the dredge is then pumped through a series of underground pipes that we've installed along the riverfront and then out at the Hawkeye site, where it's then pumped into large geotextile bags. The water then slowly seeps from these bags. The bags are then cut open, material piled up, and then it's eventually removed for the site. However, there could be an opportunity to created to put the Hawkeye site to a better and higher use if we were to relocate dredge spoil dewatering operations further up Mad Creek. This would be done by constructing more underground piping. And also as part of this, it creates an opportunity to extend the trail network up along Mad Creek as part of this project. It's a good opportunity to leverage that. This could open up the Hawkeye site to a use that's more beneficial to the community. It would remove a highly visible eyesore from a gateway into the community. It's unfortunately for such a high location, it's not a very, you know, we're talking tonight about wayfinding and stuff, and this is right at our front door into downtown in the community, and it is unsightly. One particularly important issue that we could potentially address the Hawkeye site is housing. As talked about a lot, getting more of those working in Muscatine to also choose to live in Muscatine is one of our key strategies to making this a more vibrant community. And a key strategy to achieving this is developing the housing that the people that work here but aren't living here desire. The size and proximity of the Hawkeye site to the riverfront, downtown, the trail network, major employment centers, the riverfront, it really is a unique one-of-a-kind site that presents opportunities. There's definitely some development challenges, first being the location of the dredge spoils and also the fact that you would need to raise it out of the floodplain. However, the opportunities are great, and does appear to be legitimate interest in this site for this type of development. Kind of an image here showing just kind of the proximity of this site to a lot of our critical sites here in town, particularly to major employment centers. Kind of touching on that, relocating this and then relocating the dredge spoil dewatering and then redeveloping the site does potentially address a lot of goals and strategies contained within a lot of our adopted plans. Kind of starting with the comprehensive plan, this would help advance a number of goals relating to workforce housing, gateway beautification, infill development, as well as trail development. The more recent, our strategic plan, where we talk about a vibrant community, particularly in gateways and riverfront, the downtown, this is an absolutely critical site for that, as well as developing the type of housing we need. For a riverfront community, we don't have a lot of true riverfront housing, so that's a truly unique opportunity here. To me, one of the exciting things is can advance an important component contained with their bike and pedestrian master plan, and that's the construction of the first phase of the Lower Mad Creek Trail, which would take the trail up from the riverfront, probably up to about Washington Street. And then with what's coming in the Isaac Cypress Corridor project, which hopefully also includes a trail component, you put those two pieces together, then you have a trail that would extend from the riverfront continuously up to the existing Mad Creek Greenbelt, which takes you across a bypass. So that would be a huge advancement in our community's trail goals. The potential here has been kind of long recognized. We've had relocation of the dredge spoil dewatering operations been part of all our capital improvement plans since 2014. Currently, it's in the current version of the capital improvement plan, it's scheduled for fiscal year 25-26. So kind of why we're here talking to you about this now is we have received what we would consider some serious interest from development parties in this site. However, before this site could be used for anything else, would require relocating the dredge spoil dewatering operation. So should council wish to continue to explore this further, kind of lay out what the next steps would be. The first one would be for staff to prepare a preliminary plan, a cost estimate, and a plan for how that work could be funded. The next kind of have two bullet points reversed here, unfortunately. We would also issue a public request for development proposals for this property where interested parties could submit their proposal for it. And then so we would bring back to council two things, any development proposals that have been received, and also the plan for how we could relocate the dredge spoils and how we could pay for it. At that point, then it would be, council would need to make the decision whether it is in the community's interest to proceed with that. And then it would go from there to actually executing that. So that kind of brings me back to the final point here is does staff wish for council to kind of prepare a preliminary plan, cost estimate, and options for funding this relocation? Or any other questions that you may have on this?
May I ask a question, Mayor?
You may.
Thank you. My question is if we took on that property because of flooding issues, and now we want somebody to build in that area, are they going to be in a flooded area, and would it be worth them, like if, I just think of like how the dock was up in Davenport. They built this beautiful restaurant right by the river. Was there for multiple years, then they got that drastic, and then it was just shambles.
So I can address it because there's no longer any building on site. For someone to develop it, they would have to essentially raise the ground to 1 foot above base flood elevation, which works out to about 6 feet, and then provide the appropriate engineering to flood proof it. So that would be the second step, and there are examples where this has been done, but it would have to be designed with that in mind and go through all the required regulatory approvals.
So would that be left up to the city to make those arrangements, or make up the height, or would that be the contractor?
That would be the developer, and
Developer.
then we would obviously have the review of that and to make sure it meets all required standards.
Okay, that was my concern. Thank you.
Yes. Any questions? All right. So does the council wish to desire the staff to prepare a preliminary plan, cost estimate, and options for funding the relocation? Is there a consensus to move forward with that?
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
Just to clarify, there's a cost to that. I don't think, it's not, we won't do it, we'll have people do it for us.
It's not free?
It's not free.
It's anything but cost.
Andrew.
Andrew was hiding stuff.
Yeah.
Just joking. Yeah, you're good. Thank you, Andrew. All right. Next is item C, proposed changes to Title VI, Chapter 8 regarding animal regulations.
Seems to me we've done this.
So while Captain Yurek's pulling up the presentation, I'll just sort of ground the council in this. This is an item that you tabled or postponed, I think, until September, regarding an appeal, a dangerous animal appeal. And so the staff has followed up on that and has some potential proposed language to address the issue.
So thank you, council. We'll keep this very brief. We have this in a couple of parts. Our animal control officer, Courtney Patel, will begin with our first part.
As Captain Yurek said, he will be addressing more of the dangerous animal stuff. I have some minor changes to Title VI, Chapter 8, regarding a couple different items. First, I'd like to start with, not that slide, how this aligns with our strategic alignment. We're going for a safe community, keeping all of our citizens safe, as well as supporting police, fire, and emergency with this code. Direction sought, does City Council support code language changes? And if so, do you have any feedback on what those code requirements should be in addition to what we have now? The current change and proposed definition changes I have. So the current for irresponsible owner means an owner that has violated this chapter one or more times on 3 or more separate occasions with a rolling 12-month period. We are proposing to add or one or more one occasion so egregious resulting in determination of a irresponsible owner. What that means is that with a state charge, we could still then determine them irresponsible. So if it is just so bad enough on the first time that it could be considered an irresponsible owner, whether it be 12 charges on the one occasion regarding abuse or hoarding, that one time is just so bad that it should still classify as that irresponsible owner. Moving on to the next definition would be vicious dog. Currently, it is any dog that while on public or private property, including the owner's property, without provocation or justification, bites or attacks a person and causes serious physical injury or death. That is a very specific term in state code. We are finding out that it means basically someone has to be nearly mauled to death for that vicious dog code to cover that. I believe our intention when we originally went over this was that multiple bites could also lead to that vicious dog determination, which is not currently what the definition supports. So 3 times or more may, and I think may is the important piece in that definition.
I was going to say, did you have
Well, and I feel like the council may be a tiny bit confused because part of this presentation is the language about the snakes issue. As we were talking about bringing that change forward, the team also offered some amendments to the code that we adopted just last year, and we thought we would do it all at once. So I just wanted to make sure the council was clear on why we were talking about dogs when we were originally talking about snakes.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. As I was saying, the 3 or more bites may result in a vicious dog determination. I think may is the key word. That does not mean regardless, no matter what, 3 bites. It just allows us that 3 bites may allow us to do that vicious dog determination, that it doesn't require it.
Question?
You want to ask a question?
How about one bite as an egregious attack by that dog? If one bite, is that, I mean, because the way this reads to me is you have to have 3.
So nope. So currently, how it reads is one attack that causes serious physical injury, and under the state code, serious physical injury is defined as like disfigurement. So if a dog were to attack and cause serious physical injury, that would determine that that dog is then deemed vicious. But this also allows us that if there are multiple bites under the same dog that do not cause that serious physical injury, that we could still make that determination under that definition.
So is that explanation of one bite that's egregious in there? To me, it doesn't read that way.
Yep. So the current definition is what is not highlighted, and it just says that any dog anywhere without provocation or justification just bites or attacks and causes that. So that is currently what we have, and that allows for that one attack that is extremely serious, causing serious physical injury, which is defined as disfigurement, basically, in state code, or
Yeah,
death.
I think we could add some clarifying language
Yeah.
there to say some 3 or more bites that aren't as, that don't,
Yeah,
we'll
that's-
come up with language, but aren't as severe,
That's my
may
point. I mean,
result
the
also
one
in,
is-
yes,
one
we can
is-
do that, yep.
Can be very specific, as where 3 of them is kind of vague, and so if you'd explain what one bite is, and it says that, then I'd be happier with that.
Yes, sir.
We can make that
Mm-hmm.
change.
I will. Anything else at this point? I apologize.
How do we define, or how would it be applied, one bite? I mean, do they get a citation for the first bite? 3 months later, they get another one? I mean, is it, they must be medically treated and that's a bite, or what's that mean?
So it would have to be reported. So, I mean,
That'd be reported?
yeah,
that-
it would have to be reported. And this just allows us to do so. It wouldn't require it. So that's why the language does read may, so that it doesn't mean 3 strikes and you're out, because there's obviously circumstantial issues that occur. This just allows us that if we are having a reoccurring issue with that same dog, no matter the severity of the bite.
I'm just trying to think of the person that has the yippee annoying barking tiny little thing next to him, and
Careful, Jeff.
it bit me. And it bit me, you know?
So, and that wouldn't necessarily even lead to a citation if the dog's vaccinated, up to date on registration, is all in compliance, and you go over to your neighbor's house and you got bit, and they completed the bite quarantine, that even necessarily wouldn't end in a citation.
Okay, so there is some kind of known,
Yes, yep.
this is a bite, this is
This is attack.
Yeah, yep.
a nibble or something, I don't know what to
Yeah,
call it.
there has to be puncture wounds. There is a guideline
Okay.
for that.
All right.
Okay.
Sorry, Cinda.
So other proposed code changes, this is regarding pet data. Like we said, we're kind of lumping this all together at this point, is changes to 683B, which removes that specific paragraph addressing late fees. And they have not previously been charged, so this is not something new. We are just removing that from the code to get up to date with our new pet data program that we have. So there is no actual changes that are occurring, just removing that from code to match what we're actually doing. And why now? We have covered that. We are changing from pet data to reflect those changes. And regarding the 6-8 responsible pet ownership and vicious dog, after going through some of these processes, we're finding these small issues that we're having with following through and making those changes and charging people for those things. Those are the small issues that I'm having with that. And direction sought, do you support the code language? Do you have any feedback? Would you like to move forward with the changes to 6-8?
Council?
Yep. Yeah.
I agree, just make sure we make it clarity, real clear.
Yes, sir.
Perfect.
Now we're going to talk about snakes.
Now let's.
Yep.
Councilmember
Snakes. Yeah,
Councilmember Brockert has one question.
Well, unless you're going to talk about the snakes, then I'll wait.
We're going to move to,
Okay.
So as our city administrator had spoken about, we had previously heard through an appeal process of the definition of our dangerous animal, and which brings us here today for kind of a redefinition of that, or moving forward in a code change. Our alignment here is through safe communities and innovation. We're trying to create ideas to implement new operation methods, encouraging community exploration. What we're really looking for here from you folks is that, are we looking for supporting the code change in that language? And this is specifically, it's kind of a little bit smaller here, but what we're looking at, but specifically in our code 683 through that paragraph on 3, previously it laid out a number of items, but specifically what was brought to our attentions was the snake portion of that, which leads us here till tonight. And what we are looking at doing is virtually taking out all of that language from our city code that covers that portion of it, and we are just simply adopting over the state code, the 717F code in the state of Iowa, and using their verbiage. It does allow into there the snake portion that we were talking about previously, plus with the little added verbiage there on the Burmese pythons with length not to exceed 6 feet, which again we have previously spoken about. So we have that portion. There was also other questions when we had the appeal, or we wanted to make sure that we covered the commercial breeding side of this. I commend Andrew Fangman for helping us out with this. He did a great job researching this, and we worked together. And what we really came up with is under our city code, specifically Section 4, Chapter 20 and Title 10, there's nothing that currently is within our city code that prohibits activity of having this type of operation. I specifically mean the operation that was brought to you on appeal. And the ideal words, or the key words on this that I bring out of it, are that it is an outside activity, meaning is there evidence or is there proof that this kind of business is being used outside of the residence? In the case that Officer Patel and I investigated, it was not. We looked at the changes with that, and then again, through our current city code, it looks like that it just doesn't even apply because it is not considered that non-impact home-based or that outside business side of it. So what's next is what we're looking for, depending on your direction. We certainly have heard you with the changes of what Officer Patel was bringing up. For this code, in a nutshell, we are looking at removing old code, implementing state code, putting in the little bit of a verbiage in there about the Burmese pythons and the 6 feet, and moving forward with that. So with that, I ask you for your questions and your consideration.
Councilmember Brockert, and then Councilmember.
So that means that our commercial breeders here can keep their snakes, yes?
With the reading, or with the adoption, the reading, and the approval, it appears that yes, that they would be able to continue their business currently in what we observed as their state of business when we were there. Again, I highlight there was nothing that we seen outside of the property. Everything was contained within.
Okay.
Certainly for the general public, if we get continuous complaints that stuff like that would apply, we would certainly address it accordingly.
Okay.
Councilmember Freilich.
Can you review on what we discussed on the inspections of the site, as far as who's doing it and when they're done and how often they're done?
The state, so they would have to have a pet shop license. The state is the one who does those inspections. Solely the state, they would have to register. They have a certain amount of animals that they have to sell, or a money limit that they have to sell to have that license. So from my understanding, currently they're not there, but that is likely who will be doing the inspections.
Okay.
Councilmember Osborne.
Couple questions. So the first part, I don't know, where it's got part G through K added to it, it defines snakes that are venomous or constrictors. That's pretty broad. That sounds to me like that's not allowing what they're doing.
So what you're looking at, Councilman, is what the previous city code had, which actually
gotcha.
went to the.
So you're taking out the red part.
That is taken out in
Okay.
your next slide there of what.
And then you're taking out the 6 feet. Okay,
Yes.
Gotcha.
Good question.
So that's taking out a lot.
Yes,
Okay.
the portion that,
I was reading it just the opposite. The red was the ad. So
the
that,
portion that came in conflict with city code to what we investigated was the constrictor portion of it, which the snakes that they possessed were considered constrictors.
Any other questions? Is city council okay moving forward with the changes? All right. There you go.
Hey, I have a question. We never finished out their appeal, so how do we finish out their appeal process?
We'll bring it back in the regular meeting, and you can rule. You never ruled on the appeal?
No, we
Okay, we'll put it on the next regular agenda.
Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you.
You guys are good, right?
Thank you for all your hard work.
That was my question. Yep.
All right. Next item and our last item of the night, D, which is a discussion on building code update items.
I just have it in my file. It's not.
This is past Andy's bedtime.
That's why you get paid the difference. That's why.
Got the Andy team tonight. Look at that.
That's right.
Mayor, Council, so tonight we're going to kind of be following up on some previous discussions we've had on updating the building code, kind of bringing back two things that Council expressed interest in. Going to be speaking on kind of some questions regarding the State Historic Building Code and a new construction appeal and advisory board. Kind of the two directives we're looking for tonight is, should the State Historic Building Code or similar amendments to the international existing building code be incorporated into the City of Muscatine Building Code? And also, should a new construction appeal and advisory board be created to hear appeals of actions, determinations, decisions made under any building codes contained within Title 8 of City Code, and also to advise the City Code on any future building code amendments or modifications. So during previous discussions on updating the building codes, I apologize, I already covered that. So kind of moving on to the State Historic Building Code, which is a part of the State Administrative Code. The intent of this is to provide greater flexibility in the redevelopment of historic buildings, particularly in regards to accessibility issues, while still maintaining safety standards and meeting the federal accessibility requirements under the Americans with Disability Act. So currently, buildings that, things that would fall under the state historic building codes would be any buildings owned by the state of Iowa or fall under the jurisdiction of the state building code, which would be buildings with state funding in communities that lack building codes or inspections, so not Muscatine, or buildings in local jurisdictions which have either adopted the state building code or state historic building code by local ordinance, which at this point we have not. Going on, the State Historic Building Code also has eligibility specifically related to buildings, is that a building be listed on the state or national register of historic places as either a designated historic property or is certified as a contributing resource within a listed district. In Muscatine, we have about 7 or 8 individually listed buildings and then 3 specific districts. And in the nominating papers for specific districts, the consultant that put together, there are specific buildings that are listed to contributing to, as contributing to those districts. So those were the State Historic Building Code to be applied in Muscatine. Those would be the buildings that would apply. It also provides an option for that there's an opinion of certification that the property is eligible to be listed on the state or historic register individually or as a contributing resource by either the State Historic Preservation Officer pursuant to Iowa Code or the keeper of National Register of Historic Places. So kind of more specifically, what does the State Historic Building Code actually do? It makes modifications to the international existing building code, which same as the City of Muscatine, the state adopts by reference. And these, as it kind of spoke about before, these are related to accessibility issues. We have also adopted by reference the IEBC. We do not have the same amendments that the state has adopted. So basically the meat of it, what it does is it replaces these accessibility sections within the International Existing Building Code with alternate standards that are contained within the Iowa Administrative Code. And then the other significant thing that it does is it makes modifications as to what qualifies as a grandfathering in regards to some particular occupancy issues. So how we could possibly use this is as we're adopting the building code, we could either adopt this by reference, or we could essentially adopt the same provisions by making our own local amendments, or do nothing. So that kind of brings the first directive that we're looking for tonight is, do you want us to, when we bring forward the ordinance updating the building codes, to also adopt the state historic code or something that makes similar amendments to our local code? Do you want to stop and talk about this one before we move on to the appeal board issue, or do you want me to go through the whole presentation?
Let's, does anybody have questions first? And then if not, then we'll just continue and then afterwards. Anybody have questions right now? All right, let's continue.
Okay, so kind of moving on to new construction appeal and advisory board. Currently, the city code does not define a process for appealing building code related items. Therefore, under a chapter in Title 1, the process for appealing anything under the building code is to do it before city council. And my knowledge in the 12 years that I've been here, this has never been done officially. In many communities, building code related appeals are heard by an independent appointed board that functions very much in the way our zoning board of adjustment hears appeals related to the zoning ordinance. These boards are typically made up of members of the community who are appointed by the city council and have knowledge, training, and experience relating to building construction. In many communities, the other function that these boards do is making recommendations to local amendments to the adopted building code, so actually kind of functioning like our planning and zoning commission does. How one might work if we had one right now as we're going through this is they would be looking into the deep details of amendments to the city code and then be making recommendations to you as to any local amendments that we would want to see in the building codes as we go through the process of adopting the next set of code. Actually, prior to 2015, when we did a major recodification, City Code did create a new construction appeal and advisory board. However, it was removed in 2015 because it had been years since any members had been appointed to this board or appeals filed with it. I wasn't able to track down when the last time that was used, but it had essentially gone dormant, so it was removed. It's kind of the opinion of staff that this would be very helpful to us in administering and developing code. Andy Oyen, our building division manager here, has had some experience working with such a board in some of his previous spots, so he can I think he can speak very well to some of the advantages if you'd like him to do that here.
Councilmember Osborne?
First of all, I'm warming up to this. At first I was kind of against it, but I think it's probably a good idea, especially since it's very similar to our zoning board. And as far as just commenting on why it might have went away in the 2015, there just wasn't a whole lot of construction development going on. You know, it probably died because there wasn't a lot going on back then. I mean, I can remember that's about the time I moved to town, and we've done a lot since then. But I do have one question. Why would this be isolated just to new construction? Is there any reason we wouldn't apply it to any kind of permitting? Or
It does apply to any permitting. I just did that because that was the name they slapped on it before. I think maybe construction appeal. And
okay, so it would include renovations and anything that basically required a permit, right?
Any activity relating to the building codes.
Okay.
So
well, I'm in support of it.
Any other comments?
Just a clarification, Andrew, is that the new advisory board can help with code changes and recommendations. Is that would be the direction? And
it would serve two functions. One, it would essentially be kind of like the P&Z and ZBA combined. So one function would be hear any appeals that someone disagrees with how we're interpreting and administering it. The other thing would be in developing new code. So I think a good example would be is that if there's a particular issue, say, one way you could use it is let's go through the code we've adopted and see, are there any obstacles to, say, downtown development that we could create some local amendments that would help with, while not compromising safety, and then they could do that deep dive into the code that these 5 members would have some of the background and familiarity with to help with that and provide that kind of that third-party view.
The only,
Is there anything you think would be good for the?
You've
got a lot more experience with this than I, Andy.
Yeah, just to give a brief overview, I worked for a county previously. Our population served was pretty similar to the city of Muscatine. It was over a more widespread area. However, we had appeals boards that were fairly active. We had a mechanical board, a plumbing board, an electrical board, and a building board. And all 4 of those had independent members. As Andrew said, we had some with training. We had utility board members. We had general contractors. We had electrical contractors, some of the shop owners. We had journeymen that had worked in the trade. A couple of them we had union representatives. The way that they worked, as far as Andrew mentioned code adoptions, we would get together several cities in a close area plus the county, and we would talk about what changes we all thought were appropriate for our area. We would add our own language if we felt appropriate or if there's a particular issue. But then, as a group, we would try to make them as uniform as possible, and I can't possibly express how important that is when you have contractors working kind of in the same areas. But once we had kind of come to a consensus as to what we wanted for our area, I would take those to our respective boards of appeals, and we would discuss them, and we would talk about changes. We would get feedback from them as far as what they would like to see or what they thought was appropriate. And if we got that feedback, if there were things they'd like to change, we could go back and change them, take them back to the appeals board. Then when they were satisfied, they would make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors that, to adopt them as written, or, specify what other work they thought needed to be done. And so it became a lot less pressure on our elected officials who weren't necessarily experts in those fields, and, it added another layer of comfort. Another thing that we did when we had recurring code issues, like one of those things that just comes up again and again, doesn't necessarily fit in the box of what's written in the code, we would encourage our applicant to file an appeal. There's a small fee, and we'd get together on a Tuesday or a Wednesday night. And, there were some times that our staff recommendation was to uphold the appeal because we felt that that was right for the situation or a particular code issue. And with direction from that board, we were able to eliminate some of those issues. And okay, this is how we're gonna interpret this, or how we're gonna deal with this. And we were blessed by the appeal board, and we could then approve it without asking permission from anybody. It cut down a lot on our appeals, and we had a lot fewer issues with unhappy contractors and unhappy community members.
I have a question for Andy real quick. What community were you talking about that, because you seem to have a lot of appeal boards by mechanical, electrical?
I work for Lynn County.
Okay.
We offered code enforcement and inspections for Lisbon, Mount Vernon, Ely, Center Point. So we were a little more widespread.
Okay.
We did the unincorporated areas of Lynn County and then those cities. Again, the population that we served was about 20,000.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lewis has a question.
Thank you. My only concern with I mean, I like the advisory board, I like the concept of it. My only concern is if you have a electrician, or I'm going to say electrician, I'll just use my husband, out in the field and has doesn't agree with the inspector, then is the protocol, then he needs to come before the board and say this wasn't approved, but I think it should have been? Or does it still leave that conversation at the work site where they can actually talk through the process? I just don't want it to become, every time we have an issue, then, you know, the board's going to be sitting in front of them trying to figure it out.
Yeah, that's a great question. Obviously, our goal is always to try to solve those, you know, person to person or, you know, between the inspector and the contractor. It's when we come to an impasse that board really serves its purpose.
Okay.
Certainly, we do have gray area in each one of the codes that we administer, and we like to take advantage of that as much as we can.
So who makes the final, let's say you're having some discrepancy on it, I know you have the board, but is it a majority rule, or who makes that final decision to say, you know what, yes, this is a go, you're wrong, he's right, you're wrong? So who makes that? Is it a 5-1, 3-1? How is that decision made?
We always did a simple majority.
Okay.
Of course, you have to have a quorum to have a meeting. But you know, it doesn't necessarily mean you're right or he's wrong. The basis that we would base our appeals on would be that the appellant didn't think that particular code section applied, or that we had misinterpreted it and we were wrong about it, or there was a third. It's right on the tip of my tongue. I can't remember what the third was, but it wasn't necessarily, I don't like the code, I think that's stupid, and you're right or you're wrong. It was more of a, you know, maybe it doesn't apply in this situation, or maybe it's not really the right
Interpretation of it?
determination based on the code. And to be honest, we, like our building board, for example, we had a very successful architect. We had just a citizen from the county. We had a building contractor, shop owner, and we had a union carpenter. So we did have a wide variety. There's across that cross section there, there's a quite varying difference of opinion. So I think it was pretty successful. I think most of our outcomes were good. You know, even when we end up on the incorrect side, I think it's healthy. I think it's great. You know, I'm not the end all be all decision maker. None of us are, you know, to be truthful. So I think if you can get 5 people in a room and explain the staff decision and the appellant's, you know, the reason for appeal, you know, the best chance you really have is casting it and having somebody decide for you that has a little bit of background, I think.
Go ahead, Andrew. You were going to say something.
I would, just kind of circling back to your other point, as to how many yes votes you'd have to have and exactly what's appealable. So those will be, if you choose to proceed with that, those would be the rules that you wrote into that section of city code. So,
Okay.
I mean, typically in a 5-member board, it's 3 yes votes, but it could, whatever
You don't want to
council
get
so
too many,
chooses for that.
right, and you don't want to get their board like too big either, because then
No.
you have a mess.
Five is, in my opinion, a pretty good number. 5 or 7. Sometimes 7's better. It's easier to get a quorum. Harder to find 7 people. But
Any other questions before we ask for consensus for both items?
I do have a comment.
Yes.
So, because we're looking at both the historical code, the regular code, and the new appeals board, I think this group will help a lot with making adjustments to code, keeping mindful of the intent and the safety, and not locking us down to the state historical, because that's limited. We have 7, 8 buildings, whereas I think the intent is to help maintain and update more than that. So I think this team, this board can help with that and look at those as needed and build up a stronger case for the right code. Is that?
That's kind of what I think is, I think, kind of looking for the direct, on these two specific issues, but also the direction to proceed with updating the 2021 code. And then, but you could also give the directions, if you chose to create this board, that these are the issues that you want some amendments to come back from. If you kind of set the overall parameters, then those would be the issues that they would then dive into and come back with the technical recommendations to how we might best get there.
Any other comments? All right, so the first consensus is, should the state historic building code or similar amendments to the international existing building code be incorporated into the City of Muscatine building code? Is there a consensus to move forward with?
I'm a no.
What's that?
I'm a no.
You're a no, okay.
I'm a no.
State, you said the state, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
The state historic.
because of
State
the
historic.
state.
No.
So let's discuss that a little bit then,
Yeah.
because we haven't talked that yet. All right, so
Yeah.
what do we have? A couple of no's?
Well, the reason I say no, Jeff, is what I had talked about when we first talked about this, is the fact that when you start looking at because after that first discussion we had, I went and did my due diligence. When you accept the historic code, you have to have that building verified that it is a historic building. It's not an old building, it's a historic building. Once you do that, then there's historic guidelines that you have to follow.
Right.
And there's a process, meaning that if you're going to have that be a historic building, and I'm thinking we have some historic buildings in town. I just think of like the Pearl Button Factory when they, had to go through that whole process. And it's like for us I think we're accepting something we don't need.
I don't want my hands tied that way. I want to be a little more fluid with requirements for older buildings without having to go through that historical setting. And that's what Angie,
Yeah,
and
so
that's why I
that-
think the appeals board might give us that opportunity.
So I agree with that we need to be a little bit more fluid, we need to be a little bit more customized, and that from that standpoint, we wouldn't want to adopt the code word for word the way it is. And I've talked with almost everyone here, staff and everything, about specifically in 4 areas. Well, number one, it's our code. The City of Muscatine has the ability to write the code any way we want to within certain guidelines, but specifically around what is historic or what is old or whatever we want to call it, we can define that. I think we have the ability to do that. The Iowa code has the bottom line, starts out with, it talks about is on the list, could be on the list, and then there's a third bucket that talks about, in the opinion, it looks like it could be on the list. Now, some folks here read it differently than I do, but I think we need some work there, and I'm not going to problem solve that tonight. But that's one of the problem areas that I would say we need to do a little bit more work on before adopting the Iowa code. The next one is some definitions around, there's this tiered approach to the level of work that's done. Level 1 is renovation, repairs, maintenance. If a window isn't necessarily a wooden window, single pane and the glazing and all that stuff, and we buy a vinyl window, but it looks pretty close. Almost everyone here would agree that that's allowable under repairs, if we're going to place a window. However, there is a gauge in there that says if you're going to renovate more than 50% of the building, you start getting to the level of level 4, which is the other extreme. You're going to apply all of the new building code to it. And I think that's actually fairly good language. The problem is, it's interpretive, in my opinion. I know, Andy says it looks pretty clear to him, and I say it looks pretty clear to me, but we're on opposite ends of the spectrum of how do you define 50%. So that's an area of.
That's why we have the board.
But that's why we want to.
Help set that
Yeah,
up.
again, I'm not trying to debug it at this point, but that's another area. The third area is change of use. Whether it's retail or if it's an office space, the building is pretty much the same. You could use this room here as retail or office space, and not really do anything at all to it. But because it's change of use, we apply all new code to it.
But if it's moved to residential, that needs new code.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking about within the confines of a
But if I want to
commercial,
change this into a
residential.
condo,
You're right. If you're gonna convert it,
Dramatic change.
if you're gonna convert the residential zoning part of it, that's certainly change of use. If you're gonna make a commercial property into a residential property, you gotta go through zoning for that. And then the term grandfathering, you know, that's a subjective term, and I think we need some work on that topic. So I think adapting the Iowa code is a step in the right direction, but it needs some work in those 4 areas.
so
Well, so
So
all
I was
you're
gonna
looking, it hasn't changed my mind. I still say no.
All right, so there's,
for the state
For,
historic.
for the state historic code.
yeah, and we'll be getting into the board component in just a sec, but so is a consensus to move forward with that, and you two are no?
No.
For the state historical
For the state
code,
historical,
not for the Iowa code.
that's correct.
I like the Iowa code.
Yeah, so the question is, should the state historic building code or similar amendments to the international existing building code be incorporated into the city of Muscatine building code?
We're saying no to that, is what we're saying, right?
I'm saying
That's
there
right.
needs to be
Okay.
split as a
Is that what we're
comment.
saying? I'm saying, no. I think we need to do our own code with.
Okay, so is this where I say, can I make a motion?
There's no.
It's
vote.
not
It's not up for
Okay.
debate.
Consensus.
It's a consensus.
Okay, then how do I convey that I think we should modify the state code in these 4 areas? Is that a different meeting? Is that,
Yeah, so I'll make a suggestion.
Yes.
That rather than adopt the historic code, because what I'm hearing is that generally there's a consensus that we'd like to consider amendments that are more broad than just apply to historic, but that address some of the challenges in developing in these older buildings. Am I right
Yep.
about that?
yes?
So what I would suggest is that instead of adopting the state historic code, you go ahead and adopt the 21 building code. You adopt the code for the building committee, whatever we're calling it, building and advisory
Appeal
board.
Advisory Board.
And then we work with that advisory board to develop those amendments.
Yes.
That's where you're
I
going.
agree.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's where you're going.
I am not in favor of adopting the 21 code at this time. That's a separate topic.
So is the consensus, and I hear that, is the consensus though to adopt it?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's my,
To adopt the
21 code?
21 code?
Yes.
No,
gives us a starting point.
no, we don't have a consensus.
I think all I'm looking for is there a general direction to put it on the agenda? Whether you adopt it or not, that's a vote. But I'm looking for, can we move it forward to consider it?
I think we need to work this issue with older buildings. There's no reason to blaze a trail on the 21 code. Nobody else is adopting it yet. The state of Iowa hasn't adopted it yet. I
I
don't know
can
why
tell you, Jeff,
Muscatine needs to lead the way.
I've had multiple conversations with multiple contractors, and they're like, get it done. Get it moved.
New construction contractors, yes, they will say that.
Well,
But-
I've talked to, contractors that don't just do new buildings.
What's that?
I've talked to different contractors that do like remodels and stuff. I haven't, a lot of them are working in the most recent right now, and they're ready to move on. It's like, whatever we decide they're fine with, they just want us to make a decision and
Yeah,
get going.
I hear it differently, Angie, I do.
Like, again, I'm moving forward with
Yep.
the Iowa code to the current. Set up the commission, give them their first task, which will include reviewing, more emergency things definitely need to be addressed, but then review some changes to older building code. But we can run them in parallel. We don't have to wait till we have the pretty package 9 months from now. I think we move forward and get things in place. That's my opinion, and that's why I'm going, my consensus is, I'd like to see us move forward. I'd like to see the staff address that, and also work on the commission. And then start working on the older buildings.
I don't understand this procedure. 21 code is not in this discussion at all. I bring something to the table that's also not into it, and we're not, I can't make a motion for it.
We're just having a discussion.
I feel like about 3 different times in these meetings, I've gotten run over about something I wanted to get inserted, and we don't discuss it.
You
Now,
can't-
tonight we did
You
discuss
can't do
it.
motions in depth,
Well, I understand, but last time it happened, you said I need to do a motion.
but that was during.
And I've been saying I recommend, and that wasn't good
Councilmember
enough.
Osborne, that was actually during an actual meeting, not in depth.
I got you.
Yep.
But, okay, so we're changing this recommendation. I don't get it. I'm
Alternatively-
just feeling run over on 2 or 3 different things here.
I would say alternatively, we can bring forward the ordinance to form the advisory committee. We can work with that first before we bring the 21 code forward. It could be done either way. I think it's up to council. I just need a little bit of direction of what to know sort of what do we bring to council for the next decision, yeah.
Is everybody okay to bring the advisory board?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
We can start with that.
Well, let's start with
Yes,
that.
Let's start with that, and we can go from there.
Okay.
But I think some of the problem here is Second Ward is the one that's got a lot of the problems in it. And, you know, the rest of the city is different. And you're all not seeing that. And I know you, Angie, you've been with me on some of this.
I see it.
I'm not,
Oh, yeah.
don't
I
wanna
am in
generalize.
second, I live
I
in
fully
Second Ward.
understand what you're saying. It's just that I think we're getting too many things confused in together, and we're trying to lump everything together rather than separating them out and making sure we understand what we're talking about. That's what I see.
I agree with that.
And I prefer to do just what we said and come back and do the next episode on the next thing on the next way down.
yeah, I've been
One step
pushing,
at a time.
I've been pushing these 4 things now, trying to get it on the agenda for more than a year now.
So
I
you
just
take the
don't.
risk of,
And
get
all I
it on
get,
the agenda and take the risk of losing, or do we work through this? Because a historical building, in my mind, an older building, is a lower priority when it comes time to some things. But
I'm
it
okay.
deserves attention, but you take the risk if you want to put it on an agenda for a vote. Because we're sitting here going, we want this.
well, we keep saying we want to move it forward, but we never talk about it. We don't want to talk about it. We just want to adopt the 21 code and push that marble down the road. 21 code doesn't fix the problem.
Well, I think our next step, though, is just let's get this board going, and then there'll be a second step, and then a third step. Is that okay?
Yeah.
At least
it would be a-
get the first step done first.
Yep.
Okay.
So I think we could bring forward I'd have to think about this. We'll take some action on October 7th.
Okay.
What it is exactly, I'm not sure, but we will take some action, yes.
Okay, perfect.
So where is the 21 building code? Where are we going with that? I mean, we don't have that. I know that's not on here, but we shouldn't be discussing it. But I'm just saying, where are we as a city with it?
Well,
I would say that we have our recommended amendments done. We're still waiting on, of course, some direction from council to make sure that that's the direction we want to go. We have it pretty well prepared. We don't have all the language written, but that could be accomplished in a pretty short time if we get
And have
get
you,
advice to proceed.
and have you presented those to them for consideration?
These 4
Directly,
things.
yeah.
When we first started talking about this, and it became the recommendation, they already came here with a recommendation to adopt it. Ahead of that, I've been talking these 4 things. I mean, these 4 things make the difference. Whether we adopt the historic Iowa code, whether we stay with the 2015 code, whether we go to the 2021 code, these 4 things make the difference.
But if all you need are those 4 things, Jeff, then why don't we just we do the 21 code and then adopt those as ad hoc or whatever your verbiage
Amendments.
is.
As amendments?
Amendments.
Mm.
To me, I would be okay with that, but I don't want to go and accept the whole historic code when it doesn't apply.
Well, the historic code has some benefits to it too around accessibility. I mean, they're right about its benefit. It provides a lot more detailed, just as safe, but accessibility. You know, that whole issue around whether it should be a handicap accessible bathroom or not, or whether it's grandfathered in, makes it more clear if we adopt the historic code. Problem is, Iowa hasn't made a 2021 historic code yet, so it'd be difficult to, I mean, we'd be writing our own code at that point. I'm kind of the opinion of, why not share some of the potential liability and say, well, all we did was adopt the Iowa code with some minor changes versus we blazed our own trail. So,
Yeah,
I
so
don't
one
really
of
care
the,
how we get there. These 4 things need to be talked and incorporated somehow. You know, if it's exactly the same way we're currently doing it, that's fine. I'm not trying to problem solve tonight on exactly what they need to look like, but they need to be discussed seriously versus, I just feel like I'm getting pushed around all the time and
What
not
I-
listened to.
what I would suggest is the board start with those 4 things.
Yeah.
Start with those 4 things. And if council desires to delay adoption of the 21 code until they have a chance to do that, that's fine with us. I'll defer to you on that, yeah.
I think that would be their highest priority. Makes sense,
I mean,
as
at
long
this
as there's
point,
an
I'm dug
emergency
in
that
enough
doesn't
that I
come
don't
up.
feel like it's gonna happen if I don't put a stake in the ground on it. I mean,
Yeah, and I see your point too, because you've got 2 buildings in particular within 2 or 3 blocks of this building that
yeah, we got
have a huge
caution tape
issue.
around them and everything like that. Now, that's a whole nother topic, but at one point in time, those were renovated. And the focus became, make them into new code, and we got wrapped around the axle on that and spent a bunch of money on that presumably. But we never really addressed the problems we're seeing with them today, which is
That's true.
the walls are cracking. That can be seen from the road. That's more of the same, you know, the thing that the inspection group does around rental properties. Do we have the right handrails? Do we have, that's a whole nother thing. So let's not be confused that
Okay.
adopting the 21 code or adopting these changes will do anything at all to avoid what's going on with those 2 buildings. Those 2 buildings are more of an inspection and maintenance issue. And we don't have anything for that yet at all. We're mostly focused on rental properties. They don't fall in, well, they do, but obviously we're not inspecting for bowing walls and cracking walls and structural issues.
Well, that's another topic.
That is another topic.
Okay.
But I just want to make sure we don't get confused that, you know, just, we got to jump to the 21 code to save this from happening. That's, if anything, all it does is add more cost to your renovation and less focus on addressing these kinds of issues, because nobody's looking at this kind of stuff right now.
So are we going to, eventually talk about that in a future meeting then, or is staff going to come back, or how do you recommend doing that?
I will go back. So the reason we're here tonight is that during that discussion, Councilmember Osborne brought up the issue of the state historic code, and council asked us to bring back more information. That was the last step of your decision making. So I think the question is still on the floor. Do you want to adopt the 21 code? We're looking for some direction on, do you want to wait? Do you want to do it now? We're kind of in limbo right now on that, yeah.
Well, I think we just agreed on it. We want to get the appeals board set up and get that working in finance, then we can approach the other efforts, other issues.
We
I
can do
think the
that.
board will
And-
actually help change
I do too.
culture in some of these areas.
I think we need to get that
I
established.
think it's a good step in the right direction. I was kind of against it at first, but I do think it'll, you know, a board like that, if it's staffed properly with folks that have these issues, I mean, we've had a lot of this fall through the cracks. There's no place to go except pester everybody.
So
We're happy to do that.
let's move forward with that first.
There'll be a timeline, I don't want to give any
Perfect.
impression, because there'll have to be readings, we'll have to have a whole appointment process, we'll have to solicit applications, so
Okay.
it could be, I don't know,
First
it'll take
quarter,
months.
2024?
Sounds
Take
good.
months, yeah.
Andy, Andrew, thank you so much. Councilmember Lewis, do you have anything you'd like to share tonight?
Just know that we don't have council next week because most of us are gone to a educational session, and it's homecoming week, so go Muskies. That's it. Thank you, Mayor.
Welcome. Councilmember Hopkins.
Nothing there.
Councilmember Gordon.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Councilmember Freilich.
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Councilmember Brockert.
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Councilmember Osborne.
We got a great Saturday planned. We got farmer's market, of course. We got everything going on down we normally do, but in addition to that, we do have the food truck fight happening about 1 o'clock. Going into the evening, awards are happening at 7, so that's been super popular for the last couple of years, and hope everybody enjoys that.
Yeah. Cinda?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
City Administrator Webb?
Mayor, if I may yield my time to Public Works Director Brian Steinman, if you don't mind.
If you don't mind, I wanted to make this meeting take just a little bit longer. I just wanted to invite the council to look around and enjoy these surroundings one last time. When you convene here again in October, there will be new carpet and new chairs in here. So Public Works, Building and Ground staff will start on that next Monday, removing these chairs. Then the carpet will follow, and then the new carpet will come in, and then the new chairs will be placed, and it'll be a whole new atmosphere with the paint on the walls and everything else. So I just wanted to let you guys know that. If you wanted to hug a chair on your way out or something like that,
If you'd
feel
like
free
to
to do
take
so.
one.
Well,
We could potentially make those available once you declare them surplus, but
So
anyway.
the antiques upstairs are still going to stay?
Yes.
Everything upstairs stays. It's just this level
Okay.
here.
Director Steinman, one more question. I know you've been in a couple emails with me too. Is there any specific day that the watermelon's going to be delivered to the riverfront?
I believe it is next Wednesday. Is that correct?
I think it's going to be loaded and then
Trained up there?
trained up there, but, and then I think we're going to be looking at doing like a ceremonial type of thing, second week of October.
Okay.
That's when some of the owners will, that are part of it will be coming back. But yeah, I saw a couple emails, didn't have time to read it. But
Yeah, that's yes, I believe they're going to try to load it onto the flatbed trailer next Wednesday and then bring it up here, I believe, still on the same day.
Yep.
So it'll be either Wednesday or Thursday, depending on how things go. But it has been painted and ready to go.
It's all finished.
Got your
and
stamp
it
of
looks-
approval on it?
Yeah, definitely.
Just one request for clarification, though. Council did want me to take that picture down, right?
No.
Too soon, Carol, too soon.
It's too late for that.
Oh, okay, I'll be
That
sure.
was your decision, please.
She thought she'd catch you sleeping.
I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.